5. Vamos a cambiar.
Excuse me,
Viene
sir.
ese
What
voto,
was
leyendo
what?
¿Cómo andas cambiando?
No sonaron ni
Always.
I
I
you were that
Smells good,
glowing.
sir.
Like, what are we talking about here?
Sorry, I never seen you in black.
Oh.
Oh, we got, we're matching that or
Given-
something.
I know, y'all came in.
Yo sí soy
Es que
mexicano.
I'm ready for-
Yo sí soy mexicano, color brown.
Es que, pues, ya sabes.
We're,
Estoy lista.
Okay, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is now time 5:33. Let it show that all councilmen and women are present. Invocation by Councilwoman Trujillo and pledge allegiance by Councilman Sinaga. Please stand.
As we gather here in harbor of your safety, we thank you, Lord, for our fellowship and family. We ask you that you strengthen us, restore us, and inspire us, Lord, with your love. Lord, will you fill us with your peace and wisdom and guidance so that we can make the best decisions for our community. So that as we journey onwards, we would pour out your love and grace to others. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. Okay, Ms. Ira, any public comments to come before the council?
Mayor Council, I did not get any public comments submitted. All we have today are the things listed under public comments that staff's going to be presenting to you all.
Okay, number 1, proclamation of Family Health and Fitness Day, presented by David Flores, Mayor. Okay, apparently I'm supposed to read all of this. Proclamation. Designation of June 13th, 2020 as Family Health and Fitness Day. Whereas parks and recreation are vital to the health and the wellness of communities across the country, including Pecos, Texas. And whereas parks and recreation provide inclusive spaces where people of all ages and abilities can focus on health and wellness and physical activity. And whereas living close to parks and other recreation facilities is constantly related to higher physical activity levels for both adults and youth. And whereas parks provide a connection of nature, which studies demonstrate relieves stress, tenants in personal relationships, and improves mental health. And whereas Pecos recognizes the health benefits derived from park and recreation programs and activities. Now therefore, as the mayor of the town of Pecos City, I proclaim that June 13th, 2020 is recognized as Family Health and Fitness Day in the city of Pecos, Texas. Thank you. Alright. Number 2, recognize employee as part of Public Work Weeks. Mr. Howdy?
Mayor, Council, Howdy Lisenby, Assistant City Manager. I want to turn on my inner geek for just a minute because Public Works is something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's something that most people take for granted and don't realize happens behind the scenes. And so for our community, Public Works includes water, sewer, trash, and streets. And so next week is recognized as National Public Works Awareness Week across the nation. And so we have a full staff of essential employees that show up every day. Sometimes they're working in the middle of the night and even working on weekends to make sure that the water's flowing in the direction that it's supposed to, that the sewer is flowing in the direction that it's supposed to, that the trash gets collected, and that the streets are safe to drive on. And so the teams that make up these different areas do a tremendous amount of work, and we're very proud of the progress they're making for our community. And so this is just an opportunity to recognize the efforts that they contribute to our community. And so next week is National Public Works Awareness Week, and we wanted to recognize that in front of the council and the community that's watching this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howdy.
Thank you.
Very important people. And number 3, City Council training for Redicus Agenda Management Software. Ms. Nichols?
Mayor and Council, right now we are utilizing all where y'all get y'all's packets on the iPad apps. We are using iCompass. We are about to switch over to a new product. We're going to start using Granicus. Tomorrow our department head staff, they're going to have a training on how to use it and utilize it and submit items for the packet. There's going to be a whole workflow of who approves everything. There's going to have to be kind of a chain of commands. It has to get approved through finance and the city manager before it can be brought to y'all's agendas. But once we get that ball rolling and we're ready for you guys to start using that new app, I'm going to sit with you guys probably after one of our council meetings and show you how to use that. It should be as simple as the app we use right now. It just will be using a different program.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Okay, number 4, encouraging submissions for the naming of the Orange Street Park. Mr. Oscar Ornelas.
Mayor and Council, it's nice to address you after it's been a few weeks I've gone to address you. There's a few things. I have the next few items here. I'll make it real short and quick. We're still encouraging submissions for the Orange Street Park that the city has been putting a lot of work into. If you guys haven't driven by there, it looks amazing, looks great. We want to honor a family or a person that's an unsung hero here in town. We have gotten 22 submissions in about a month's time. So we are actually gonna, tomorrow's the last day at 5 o'clock to put in a submission. After that, we'll put all the names together and we'll present them to you guys so we can go ahead and name that park. And later on this summer, we'll actually have a re-grand opening for that park, or it'll be renamed. We'll unveil everything, so we're very excited about that. So if you guys have a name or want to submit, you can bring by a letter, or you can go online on the city's website, and you can. There's a link there where you actually can fill out a form, and we can see what who you choose. So we encourage the public and everybody to.
These names, did they have a history on them or something? A little summation of why?
Yeah, on the form there's actually why you feel that they should be honored in that way. So there's actually, why you feel, and that way we know there's they are somebody that has done something for our community. So we encourage you guys and encourage the whole town there. Like I said, tomorrow's the last day for that one. On the next one, I have the next one also. Yesterday we had the fallen officer memorial at the police department. Because of social distancing, we did have it closed, but we did live stream the event. It was a very nice event, and we actually made a video that we put on afterward. It's actually on our Facebook, and it'll be on our YouTube tonight, and it'll be on the city's website. So it was a very nice event, and we give a big shout out to the police department and chief for putting on that event. It was very nice.
I actually saw it on the news.
I saw it on the news too.
Oh, was it? I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I didn't even know I had made it on the news. That's awesome.
Channel 7.
Yeah, last night.
And the next event, the last one I'll be up here for, is we will be having, we have scheduled our Veterans Memorial Park dedication for July 2nd. We found it fitting for it to be July 4th weekend to open up that park. If you guys haven't gone by, it's amazing what has transformed into.
Mm-hmm.
I know tomorrow they will be installing the trees out there, so I'll be out there looking and taking pictures of them installing the trees, and it's turned out to be a very, very amazing park that's going to be a very, very big asset to this community. And I just heard earlier today that there's a group of riders that usually do Ride to the Wall, that they're doing an unofficial ride, and they will be in town tomorrow, and they will be going by to pay their respects at the park. So July 2nd, put down your calendar. We invite everybody to be there. As we get more of the event plan, we'll let you know, but we plan for it to be, quite a celebration for finishing up that project and for our veterans.
Oscar,
Good
do you
job,
know
Oscar.
when
Thank you.
the plane will be coming in, or when they want to set it up, or?
With all this that's been going on with the COVID-19, it's been put on hold. That group is just waiting till they can actually get everybody mobilized so they can take down the plane and bring it, because they want to do it all at one time.
Oh, okay.
So it's all volunteers that's doing that for us. all that work is being, they're volunteering to do all that work, so it's just, as soon as they can get everybody together, but hopefully we'll have it here real soon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Great job. Okay, number 7, announcing the Pecos Cares roll-off campaign for May 16th. Mr. Donnie?
Mayor, Council, thank you for this opportunity to talk about a very highly successful campaign we have going on called the Pecos Cares Roll-Off Campaign. Last month, we had almost 8 tons of trash collected. So people are out there cleaning. So I'm extremely happy with this program. It's very successful. This month it will be on the east side. We'll station our roll-offs at East 6th and South Sycamore and South Locust and East 12th. And hopefully we'll get as much as we did last time, because the more they put in there, the less there's clutter in our city. So super excited about this program.
I know a lot of people talk about it. They're waiting for Saturdays to roll around. So
Absolutely.
figure out where we're gonna be.
And I will be on the radio tomorrow, letting everybody know where we're gonna be. So.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Ronnie,
you.
if you can tomorrow on the radio, I know we're down trucks. I called Howdy yesterday, because the one the 2 by my house and then the one between Washington and 8th on Bodart, they were overflowing. But particularly because people are throwing boxes whole, instead of folding and breaking and unfolding fiddle. And then some people are throwing their tree cuttings in the dumpster. I won't name names, but
Actually, it's funny you bring that up, because my code's been working those cases all week. Well, I've seen a lot of them.
yeah.
People are at home, so they've got time to do that kind of
Yes,
stuff.
if you can remind folks, if you throw a box, fold it in or flatten it out so it won't take up room. Be courteous to
The next one.
others, to everybody else, So,
Absolutely, yes, sir.
thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, my wife caught I guess it was a construction crew, and they were dumping all sorts of construction debris in our dumpster. But she went out there and said, hey, my husband's just threw some at the landfill, y'all can do the same.
Yep.
And if I can piggyback on that, if people see that kind of stuff, if you could let us know, that way we know where the trouble spots are.
Okay.
So.
No working.
Okay.
You want that new system?
Yes, I loaded it up yet.
Oh, see?
Did I skip you or?
No, I'm not on there, I'm just at public comments.
Okay, then, come on. I said, man, did I
Yeah,
miss
no,
something?
and Chief is in the hall, so she'll be next, but, Chris and I are the HR director of the city of Pecos. I just want to take this opportunity to recognize 5 employees that we had this month who were, nominated under our Pecos Proud Post program, which is an internal program for peers and supervisors to nominate people who go above and beyond in their regular job. So our IT department, consisting of Jesus Gomez, RJ Guerrera, and Josh Ortiz, all received nominations and thank yous. Marianne Lopez in our finance department and Esteban Barrera in our streets department all received nominations by either peers or supervisors for going above and beyond. Also wanted to take this opportunity to let everyone know that the city is launching a safety committee, which is being spearheaded by Donnie McKinney, our chief building officer. But we're excited for a lot of things we're looking at to help contribute to a culture of safety and further that as well. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Council, anything from you guys?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Instead of loading up, they give them paper.
This is what we used to do.
Yeah.
We used to.
Okay, let's go ahead and
Well,
go to
I do wanna share something, I can't remember all the details, but the graduating class of 2020 will have their parade on Saturday at 8 p.m.
I thought it was 6.
on the radio.
I'm sorry, it is 6. I'm thinking graduation.
They line up.
It's at 6.
They line up
yes.
at 5.
Are they having a parade?
Yes, they're gonna
That's
have a
great.
parade. They're not gonna be throwing any candy, they're not allowed to, but, you know, everybody just goes and supports them and just, you know,
The route starts right here?
Yes.
I believe so.
And then
Here at
goes-
City Hall,
From
and then
here to the
at
hospital.
American Home Health.
Yeah.
It ends at American Home Health.
Oh.
They're encouraging people to stand in their car, sit
Yeah.
inside their cars or outside their cars.
Just support.
Yep.
Support these kids.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else, guys?
Okay. Let's go on to E, consent agenda. Approve the minutes of the April 23rd, 2020 regular city council meeting. Approve the minutes of the May 7th, 2020 special city council meeting. Approve the minutes of the May 7th, 2020 budget workshop. Approve the minutes of the April 2020 PDC board. Approve the expenditure reports and approve the call reports. Is the chief here?
Yep.
That's not. Chief, how are you, ma'am?
Hi, how are you?
I have noticed the shots fired seems to be slowly going up.
Yes, it is.
Is that any concern?
Very much so. So quite a few of them, we have made traffic stops, we've recovered weapons, we've made arrests, and we've had a lot of burglary of residents and vehicles where weapons have been stolen.
Wow.
So yes, it is a grave concern.
Now, I know that you had done a, what you call it, to be able to buy supplies, that you got, not a donation, but a grant,
Yes.
for, I think it was a vest the last time.
Yes, sir, it's rifle resistant.
Now,
yes.
have we received that?
Yes. We've
All our
actually
guys
received.
have vests, all our guys have?
They do. So they have their regular body armor that they wear underneath the uniform. The secondary is another vest that goes on top of that, so it's rifle resistant. So there's a lot of automatic rifles, obviously, now, so. But we did receive that grant twice, and so the first time we got 23 vests. The second time we've been approved to order 10.
Okay.
So we have plenty for, the SWAT of course has several layers of protection, but this is for patrol to have a, a much needed layer, if you will, as well.
And only, I mention this because I've had not a whole lot of people ask me, but they're concerned that we push masks and they can't identify certain individuals. It cannot be helped. My answer is it can't be helped. This is something that's going on. We can't control that. We want them to wear a mask. If you think they're doing something bad, call the police department. If you're sure they're gonna do something bad, call, we'll find out, we'll check. So, I don't know if you've had many calls on something like that with the mask, but I don't believe this council or I'm gonna start telling people not to wear them. No, we are going to encourage it till we figure a vaccine comes out or something to help these guys, so. But I had noticed that, so I
We
appreciate
have not
it.
had like a large amount of those type of calls, and we do the same. We encourage, all of CDC guidelines to be followed. If that includes a mask in a group setting, then we absolutely encourage that.
And I know also another issue that I've noticed on the news creeping itself up, and I've noticed here it's creeping itself up, is your welfare checks and, everybody's home, I guess. They don't have a lot to do and they're getting fights or what have you as well. So, again, I know that is kind of creeping up as well, and I've noticed on the news, so I hope we have enough staff to cover everything that's going on with any issues there.
We have had, I don't want to say a rise in domestic, but like you say, there's more people at home. There's more time spent, I guess, together, and with that has come the drinking and the assaults have taken place. But You know, aside from a large array of traffic stops that we normally would make, our call volume is still up there. I know it may not look like it with the numbers, but the numbers that are missing are the traffic or the in-person contact that we would make ourselves or self-generated. So yes, we do. I'm not gonna say there's not vast array of domestics, cause there is. With that comes child abuse, sex abuse, the whole 9 yards, so.
Back to the shots fired, is there any section of town where they are more prevalent?
I would say no.
No,
You know,
they're
it
just
depends
everywhere.
on, yes, sir.
Hmm.
You know, I did, you know, at one point I kept hearing the same time, more or less. It seems like you could get the shots fired call. And a lot of times you wanna know, is that trying to divert the police to one side of town so something could happen
Exactly.
on the opposite. So we don't send everybody obviously to one side, but we do send a vast array of officers to where the shots fired is, in the event, you know, it is a shooter of some sort. But even we've been surprised at the amount of weapons that we recover.
I see.
And, you know, whether it's a SWAT call out where alleged weapons are involved, 9 times out of 10, we're recovering those weapons.
And those weapons, are we having people with felony records that shouldn't be possessing of weapons, or?
There are times,
Mhm.
yes sir, we do, or they don't know where they got the weapon, or, you know, who they bought it from, and a lot of people that we do take those reports from don't even know their own serial numbers, stuff like that, so it's hard to prove like, oh, is that a stolen weapon or not, until we track down the actual initial owner, or the one who purchased it, which doesn't necessarily mean they're the owner at the
Yeah.
time, because they may have sold it, you know, 2 or 3 times.
And just, I don't know if y'all have heard it on the news the other day, you probably heard of the ghost gun.
Yes.
There, you can buy parts, and it doesn't have a serial stamp number on it, so you can buy the different parts and make your own gun without having to be registered, or you can be a felon or a person that's not, by law, can't have a gun if you can have your own. There's been some shootings with people
There have.
having one of those guns, as they call them. You can make it you can get a pistol or an AR-15, you can get those and make those, so.
And during this time, there's been like a huge rush on ordering ammunition as well. So ammunition's even hard to find because there was like such a rush to order it. So a lot of the businesses or sporting goods stores are even out of ammunition.
Don't tell me that, that's gonna be Saturday.
A lot of stockpiling going on.
Really?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, motion to approve.
Well, I have a question real quick. Well, I don't know why I didn't notice before, but because we were trying to save money here and there, or, you know, because money is low. I noticed that there's a payment that we make, I guess, on a monthly basis to Delcom for internet housing in the amount of $3,150. Who is this for?
You got a monthly?
Is that you?
It looks like it.
I apologize, I only caught part of that.
So, I'm guessing this has been here before, but I just now noticed it because we're trying to penny pinch everywhere. And it says May monthly, so I'm guessing this is a monthly bill of $3,150 to Delcom for internet / housing.
Yes,
Who are these for?
these are the trailers that
All
at
of
the
them?
airport, yes. So that is currently under negotiation again to bring down that bill. But there was a contract signed a year ago.
We're furnishing,
Internet,
we're paying the internet for
all of this.
the employees.
Yes, sir. For that facility.
I would like my company to pay my internet.
You have employees, you have, peace officers, you have.
No, but if it's for, I hate to, if it's for personal use, they should provide their own, I'm sorry.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we're gonna, you know, pinching back everything that we're gonna be doing, it starts there, because I mean, you know, we
How many-
ourselves are having to pay for our own.
Because how many units is it?
13.
12.
13.
It's not the.
And with that being said, we're looking at, you know, trying to see where we can curtail. I was looking at the credit cards. There's a lot of stuff in there that, and I don't know what they are, because I read them, but, if there's some stuff there that really it's not needed, I think we could curtail back a little bit on that as, you know, if it's not, if it's something that's needed to do their job, well, I can understand it, but if it's something that's nice to have, I just don't see it, there's I mean, I was going through the credit cards earlier, there's some expenditures there. One of the things I see is if we don't need to travel, why travel? You know, so, like I said, I don't have all the details, I'm just quoting what I saw there, so. If we're gonna be, you know, from what we heard on the budget and all that, and like what Councilman Orona said, last Thursday is, we start today, you know, pinching back, like, you know, we're having to do it at home and everywhere. I pinch back all my guys, they all have credit cards. And like I told them, you wanna keep a job, you better get the credit card.
Could they not give us a better rate? I mean, I don't know if I'm doing the
look-
math correctly.
Well, I'll
But-
address that. I've been negotiating with Delcom, and they're extending fiber to the airport, to the terminal.
Mhm.
And I'm giving them access to an additional water tower. And so the internet for the airport terminal is going to be free, and they're cutting the rate in half for the housing.
For the housing.
And so we are getting a reduced rate for those services, but that was all part of extending fiber over to the airport for the new terminal building.
I mean, it's, for an individual, it's nice, I pay $51.81 with Delcom, for my own home. And right now, we need to cut back as much as we can, maybe it's something that we need to visit, or go half and half with.
Because I mean, the internet is not a necessity, so to speak, but I get it if we were to provide maybe the department heads, but not everybody.
And some of the staff that are out there frequently work from home after hours.
Mhm.
And so that was some of the idea, is that it's typically department heads and police officers.
Mhm.
And so if they're being asked to work from home, evenings, weekends, and part of the internet, that was the rationale. And so we've been working to get the cost down, but we'll do whatever the council
Yeah,
directs.
let's look at that, because it's monthly, that's a lot. So, whatever you guys.
I have the
Yeah,
best
I agree.
internet, so I pay
Yeah.
about $180 a month, so.
What's your speed?
Shit, I think like 20 gigs.
Your
It's
speed below?
good. I have good internet.
My son told me.
Everybody go to his house.
I, you know what, the thing is, I let my neighbors use my
Your pass-
Wi-Fi.
We're getting 50 megs of service to each of the houses there at the airport.
Well, tell the house to pay it off the day.
Hold on, baby. And
50
I
megs
have-
is better than 20, so.
And I have told some kids, you know, to go by there and they can use the internet there, the Wi-Fi. Because we don't provide Wi-Fi for these kids that we gave computers to.
To stay home and do their homework.
You know, I mean, eventually it'll go away.
We were having some of our students, we were advising them to go park in the parking lot of the school, and they would open up the Wi-Fi for them, so.
But yeah, if you're in a car, you're wasting gas, because you gotta have your air
Yeah,
conditioner running.
and we had to work from home, and the school didn't pay for our internet, we worked from home. So-
And I like it because we got a lot of movie watching.
Yeah.
None of this downtime, you know, you
It's
have
not
to
a
wait till
necessity.
it falls.
Buffers.
No way.
What do you have?
I don't have
What do you?
Windstream. And it goes up, every time it goes up, and it goes up more.
Price?
You call them and they'll bring it down a little bit. You give them another month, it goes up again, so. But again, you know, if I don't want it, I'll just cut it off, but I think, you know, internet doesn't lie. So we have to use it, it's part of,
You beat him up pretty good, and if, tell me, you're gonna have to face the council next time.
Let us
And we're
know.
not as nice as
If all
you.
come drops it.
Well, I got them cut it in half, so
That's good.
Yeah.
that's making progress.
Yeah.
Okay, so I still need a motion to approve.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda 1 through 6 as reported.
Second,
Second.
so I have a motion by Councilman Rona, second by Councilman Reyes to approve agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Go on to the non-consent. Presentation to recognize, Corporal Alvarez, promotion to sergeant in the Pecos Police Criminal Investigation Department. Chief?
Mayor, Council, in lieu of us continuing to try to develop our own within our own agency, we've had a vacant position in criminal investigations for a sergeant. Corporal Alvarez came in off of patrol, right out a year ago, a little bit over a year ago. And in the past year, not only has he excelled as an investigator, he's literally knocked it out of the park every time, no matter what he's working on. And being that that position was still available, it was open, it was absolutely budgeted for, it had been vacated by a previous investigator, we felt it was most appropriate at this point to promote Corporal Alvarez to Sergeant Alvarez for criminal investigation.
Congratulations.
And he has, you know, and it's just, no matter how big or how small the task has been, he's done more than 100% of what needed to be done.
Thank you.
So I felt it was appropriate to recognize him to the council, just to continue to try to build within our department instead of seek somebody from the outside.
That encourages them all to.
It absolutely does.
There's mobility and they're, you know, stay here at Pecos and help us out.
And so with that, we have another position available. They have done an internal interview. There was an officer that was interested, or several, but one that they chose. And once we get a couple more personnel hired for street patrol, we'll be pushing another person into investigations. Because their work hasn't gone down at all during the virus. It hasn't really affected us, like I said, other than self-generated traffic stops. So our call volumes continue to rise, unfortunately. I said crime doesn't really care about a virus, so it just keeps on going.
Thank you, Chief.
So,
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can I ask a couple of questions? Where are you from originally?
I'm from here.
You're from Pecos? Okay.
All right.
That's great.
Well, grown
See me
up.
later.
Yes, it is.
Who are your parents? Excuse me.
Richard and Dolores Alvarez?
Oh, okay.
You're gonna put a 7th Street, right?
No, from Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Ah, so you're going in.
Don't
Take care of me.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, number 2, update presentation by Donnie McKinney, Chief Building Official concerning boarding houses, commercial trucks in residential zones.
Mayor, Council, Donnie McKinney, Chief Building Official. This is a carryover from a public comment from the last council meeting. It seemed like y'all might have some questions, so I just want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you have about boarding houses and commercial trucks. Because that was her main complaint, was the boarding houses. And down the street from her, there are some commercial trucks parked in residential.
I know that you answered the boarding house pretty much by identifying their family, so it's not like anybody's just moving in there, so, you know, that doesn't leave a whole lot of questions between that if they're family. Because the ordinance does say that they have to be related, so, they're not related. And the commercial trucks in residential zones, now that, can they done?
They cannot. It is against the current ordinance to park commercial trucks in residential neighborhoods. And I get complaints all the time about it, and we investigate every complaint that we get. But then,
Where the citizen lives at, is that residential?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Even though it's on the corner of Stafford and, okay.
Yes, ma'am. And we have addressed that, and I think they moved them, but they put them back, so we'll go remind them that once they're moved, they can't be put back. But,
It's a dilemma because some of you may remember, or maybe not, but when I worked with Duval back in the early 80s, we would park our cars for Rotary Ground, remember?
Oh, yeah.
They took us from there, so I often wonder, well, could we use that spot for them to park there, but then it would be chaotic, you know, so, I mean, I feel for them because they don't have a place to park their truck, but whoever they work for should have a yard,
Exactly.
you know, so.
And if they're personal, I mean, the personal vehicles that they actually purchase for their business, I mean, you know, those big trucks in the residential, no. Or backhoes, track holes and all that stuff, it's, I pass by there, you know, quite a bit, and I notice that they're not there. They used to be there, and some of those vehicles are not there, but there's other areas in town that, one in particular is right here on Third Street. I see that trash truck has been there, or that dump truck has been there right by where that building that they just knocked down that, yeah, across the street.
Motel.
Yeah, across the street that, there's been a dump truck parked there, man, for a long time that I can, right there off of Third Street.
I'll investigate it, but Third Street is a commercial
Yeah, right.
district, so.
Oh, okay.
I'll see if it's not operable or something, that's a whole different
Yeah,
ordinance.
but I haven't seen it move. And I walked that area when I was campaigning.
And just full disclosure, I have had a couple residents that have, commercial trucks that have came to me and said, why can't you ease up on us? That's totally up to y'all. If that's something you want to entertain, we can look into doing it, because they want to be able to park their trucks there.
And like I said, I understand their plight, but it's still an ordinance. The roads aren't made to handle that kind of weight.
Right.
And then my truck, if I have a truck there and I started up early in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm disrupting my neighbors.
Right.
You know, they're loud.
Yeah, and then, you know, people in the residential park on the street, when those big trucks come through there, man,
You're narrow.
it's narrow.
Or you
Yeah.
park your 18-wheeler on the curb, you're taking up a lot of space.
That's right.
Even though it's public parking, but still.
This is an item that we addressed several years back, and that's why we came up with.
Well, me personally, as being in charge of code enforcement, I would not like to see it change, but again, that's totally, and until I get direction from y'all to stop, I'll continue to enforce that ordinance.
And as much as people are not gonna be happy with it, but they had a decision.
Right.
And we gotta take the majority of our taxpayers for the more, not the few, but the more, you know. So,
And the kids crossing streets, and old ladies are all
Yeah.
dragging cars.
And these streets are not made for sharp turns
Right.
with this big
Oh,
vehicle.
I'm sorry, Dave.
Old man.
So that's my update. If you have any more questions, I'll definitely entertain them, but.
Thank you, Mr.
No,
Don.
thank you,
Any
what you
other
guys are
questions?
doing.
Sir?
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Don. Okay, number 3, discuss consider ordinance 20-05-01 regarding shipping containers, first reading, Mr. Donnie.
Mayor, Council, again, Donnie McKinney, Chief Building Official. This is an ordinance for those, intermodal shipping containers. That's the official name of them. You may know them as Conex boxes, shipping containers. There's several names for them, but basically, everybody does know what I'm talking about, correct? I've written a lot of tickets for those things being there, and, the Planning and Zoning Board asked me if we could revisit what we're doing with those. So this ordinance is what we came up with. Basically what would change is, right now they're only allowed in industrial. Our proposal with this ordinance is to let them be allowed in C1 and C2 temporarily. And basically, they can get a 6-month special use permit. They can renew it for up to 2 years. But our thought process for cutting it off at 2 years is, if they need it that long, they need to go ahead and invest in their buildings. So, but this gives them some leeway that they can use those for a little while. If they have a big rush and they think it's gonna slow back down, this gives them a mechanism to use them for a little while, but they're not gonna be permanent.
Can you tell us who's asking for?
Do they even
this?
have enough, well, kind of, right, with that question, because would you be able to tell us who was wanting one, and second, would they even have enough space on their property to put them?
Well, it tells about that, how far they have to be apart. They have to be at least 5 feet apart so that you can get between them, things like that. And that was something we would investigate when they come to apply for the special use, is we'd have to go out there and look and make sure they have room for it, that it's gonna be setting 5 foot off the property lines, at least 25 foot from the front, things like that.
Could you give us at least a number of the businesses that have shown interest in having those kind of containers, off the top of your head?
1, 2, there's about 5 businesses I can think of right off the top of my head.
As in like the main,
They are,
they're
Cedar's the main one. Walmart is actually one of the ones that has talked to us about it. And they actually have 5 that are grandfathered in right now. So,
But is there a
That's
limit?
kind of what led us to this is Walmart.
I hate that.
Me too.
Is there a
That
limit?
grandfather's
on
word.
On the new one, on the new ordinance?
Let me see what I put.
Up
Where's the
to,
limit? No more than 4 containers per tract, if they have the room for them. They keep that 5-foot separation. And they will not be allowed to be stacked on top of each other. They all have to be on the ground.
Side by side.
Yes, sir. So,
the last count that you moved Walmart, what was it?
well, back at Christmas time, they had 17.
Okay.
They're back down to 5. But this is why we've done this, because they do that every year. Well, obviously, that shows that they need a bigger building.
Yeah, I don't know why they just don't build
So-
We need to
something.
stop
Allow
allowing them to do that so they can commit to do something more permanent instead of shipping containers.
And the money is there.
It is.
So right now, they're not allowed at all in C1 or C2. This is just something, because maybe a business experiences a big growth spurt and they don't have time to build a building. This gives them a mechanism to use it for a little while.
And Donnie, you're saying 2 years.
Up to 2 years.
Is that, I know the board brought it before, because it's what they wanna change, because I know they've had a lot of people approach them with that. Now, is that something that we wanna do? Is that something you wanna deal with? Because this is your area.
I've got no issue with 2 years, because sometimes it might take them that long. If Walmart builds a brand new building, it's gonna take them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Minimum 2 years. Minimum 2 years.
And this kind of gives me some discretion if they come in once and do it, then we can look at it, revisit it every 6 months to see if there's still a need for them to keep those.
Because you know, that's a good
The
area
question is,
to
will
look
they ever
at.
build? Because, I mean, they've needed, let's use Walmart as an example. They needed to build something 10 years ago. They never
Well,
did.
doesn't Walmart rent the building?
Yeah.
They do rent the
That's
building.
part of the challenge
Yeah.
specifically with
Yeah.
Walmart, is that they're tenants.
Mhm.
And so they would love to have a bigger building, but their business model is typically they lease the building from whoever builds it. And so there has not been someone willing to build a structure larger for them to move into yet.
Even for the one
See, and
at
at least-
Fort Stockton? I thought Walmart built that building.
Well, if they can find a building that's already there, they would
No,
rather
no.
do
I
that,
think
but
it
they do
depends
build
on the
some.
town. I
Yeah.
think
When-
it depends on the place. I believe some places they build their own and some other places they rent.
I think in Fort Stockton, I was there when they built it, they built it themselves.
Yes, sir, Walmart did build that one.
But the Walmart representative that came to planning and zoning for the application said they would be looking for a building to lease.
Yeah.
But they don't have the ability to add on to this building because they don't own it.
Yeah.
It's crazy that they would do that, especially here, because they have so much revenue here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it doesn't make sense.
I'm just thinking that, is that something you and your guys wanna handle? Because again, it's a good sized area, whatever, all of them, and I don't see all of them saying we're gonna bring one now that we're allowed.
No, but
It's pretty
you have
much
to-
the ones that want
You
one
have to
already
think
showed
there is
interest.
also that Walmart has space in the back, space that it doesn't block,
View.
the vision, the parking, anything like that. We're talking about locations that don't
Are
have
limited.
as much space as Walmart does.
So if they don't have the space, they don't get the container.
No.
I'm not sure we want them at all.
Well, and when it came before P&Z and P&Z asked us to address the council, we brought it and just asked if y'all wanted us to look into this, and y'all indicated that you did. And so based on the research we've done, this is what we feel like this is the most reasonable recommendation we can bring forward.
Okay, so
But it's still at y'all's discretion.
Sorry, sir. Right now, by Pizza Hut, there's one that's just single, right there in the ground. Mr. Graham's building.
Yeah.
Now you go further south, Russell Cido, he's got them stacked up.
I believe all of his are gone, aren't
Yeah, I
they?
think
Those
they're
are
gone.
gone. I haven't been there in a
He-
while.
he's
It
one of the
would
ones
be
that
that
I
he has
there's
some
one
back,
that's-
four back.
Listen.
But I don't think he would have the room for the 4 that he had before because of they have to be on the ground, they
Yeah.
have to be spaced, so he may be able to squeeze in 2 in there.
Yeah, maybe.
And again, Howdy's right, we did ask him to draw up a new, ordinance, just to try to accommodate for a little
We
bit,
asked them to
so.
gather information.
I guess,
Yeah, and the other issue is what fee do you charge for this special use permit?
Mhm.
Because on one hand, we're giving the business to be flexible to respond to changes in demand without adding onto the building. So that helps them. Well, but on the flip side, if they're having that much business, then they're having more traffic on our streets, they're creating more wear and tear on our community. And so the property tax should represent the burden they're putting on the community. And so if you set the fee comparable to what the property tax would be on that square footage, it should resolve that issue. But we don't want them to do it forever as well, because at some point in time, if their business grows, they need to invest in the building. And so that's why it's a temporary permission, not a permanent permission.
It's gonna be hard to do, but each one is almost like an individual basis on an individual basis.
Yeah, you gotta evaluate the property, how much space they have, can they do it safely? Because we're not gonna let them impede public safety.
Like right now,
For
the
their convenience.
greatest question
And how
is,
close they
would he
can
be
be to the
compliant?
actual
He is not
right
in
of way.
compliance. I mean, if we pass this, he would be in compliance.
He would, with this.
For 2 years, and then, he's another one that's already been to the P and Z with those. And he moved most of them out. I noticed the other day, he still got one. So, but this just gives us a mechanism to work with the citizens that own businesses. But after that 2 years, they're done. They either build or they go back into their.
To the original. Like, because like this one, for example, is on 3rd Street, and then we got some on Cedar. Those are main thoroughfares. You know, yes, I think we wanna keep it more cleaner and uniform.
We require it to be behind the fence.
We do not.
No.
That would be something that could be added.
Yes.
It does have language in here that it has to be painted to complement
Yes.
the building.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, and I'm glad of that one, because I don't want off colors, you know, building one color and the.
Yeah, purple and
Yeah.
green.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not from Pecos?
You're thinking of something that's.
Oh, I bleed
Purple's
purple.
okay.
I bleed purple.
Oh, you should.
You gotta remember, I'm the one that dressed up in the Eagles costume at all the football games.
You want to do
Some of the businesses, they have those connexes behind the building where you don't see them.
Right.
But that will still fall in that 2 year,
Yes, sir.
basically 2 year.
Yes, sir. And then it also talks about, it does have some fines in there. If they don't get their permits, we can fine them up to $200 a day, but we haven't set the fee for the actual permit yet. Oh, that's what I was gonna talk about. In industrial zones, they're allowed now, and that would continue.
Yeah.
They just have to have a permit to move it in there. Once they move it in there, it's a use by right.
And if they move before they get the permit?
If they move before they get their permit, as y'all graciously let me at the last meeting, then we'll get a double fee. That was the other thing I wanted to talk about. The only time they'll ever be allowed in residential is as a job trailer. If they have a permit to build a house or remodel a house, they can set one of them there to use as their job trailer to store their stuff, make sure it doesn't get stolen and stuff. But that's any building permit this can be used, is how it's stated.
Yeah, just like Trans-Pecos had one. I don't know if it's still there. I don't
It
think
is.
We're enforcing.
I'm trying to get that one going right now.
So-
That's a sore subject.
And how about their stairs? They're still there. The ramp.
Yeah.
Can we make them?
That's not.
Yeah, it's not really, I mean, I can go ask them to move them, but there's no really enforcement that I can.
I actually saw them and I was gonna approach them to see if they would donate it to a lady that needs a ramp.
That may be.
That, she fell, broke her hip.
I can talk to the president of the bank and see if he may be
Take a
interested in
picture.
something.
I was actually gonna ask them to donate and see if we could get it moved, not the city, you know, maybe volunteers. Because she's gonna need one eventually. She has one, when she gets out of the hospital, she's gonna need one at her house. But I'll come see them tomorrow.
Okay. So any other questions you have about this?
Okay, need a motion to approve?
Well, it's just, wait.
Motion by Councilwoman Vaca.
No, wait, no. No, sir.
You still got questions?
For some reason, I thought it was update and presentation, but it was, I was in the wrong item.
Okay,
Can
so-
we limit the number of businesses? Maybe only allow 6 per year or something?
Then that comes into which ones do we allow to do it? You know,
First
if we-
come, first served?
I think you're gonna get some challenges there. I would not recommend that, because then we're starting to play winners and losers. And I think that would potentially end up in some discrimination lawsuits. I think we would get challenged on that. I may defer to the attorney.
So
but-
then maybe we shouldn't do it at all?
Well,
They need it. It's something that's needed, but we need to.
Well, I mean, as a business owner, you know what you need and you don't need, and what you're supposed to plan ahead for. You know
Well, like
why?
Brady, for example, he's been in that same position,
Mhm.
that same building for years. It's cheaper to have those there, if he keeps them neat and within code.
And I get
to store-
that, I
To
just,
store it.
I don't, we're gonna start seeing these more, and then we're
No,
gonna
not
be
necessarily.
overrun by them.
Well,
We have a lot of business owners that, as soon as you prove this, we're gonna be like,
if they have the space and it can be done
Yeah.
safely and in light with the ordinance, you can
Yeah.
put any restriction you want on there, but I would not recommend limiting the number of businesses that can do it. I think that introduces some litigation that we might not be able to be successful at.
and with the 2-year time limit, you're gonna tell 6 people they can have them for 2 years, and everybody else has to wait that long to to put theirs in.
And then that one person that's been in a 6-year term, because we're not saying you only have 1 2-year limit term. He can say before my term is out, I want to put for another 2 years. And he just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling.
Well, no, the way it's worded, you have to renew it every 6 months.
Yeah.
For a maximum of 2 years. After that 2 years
Oh,
is
you're
up,
right.
you
You're right.
have no option to do
Okay.
it again.
Okay.
You could potentially add some more restrictions to it on where it's visible from.
I think we got that, don't we?
We didn't put fencing in there, but it could be added.
Right.
In other words, if you see it from the street, maybe no.
I think you all tried that fencing issue a while back, and it didn't really go well.
Those are the kind of things you could add to it.
And I know right now, there's, the way the virus is pushing everything out, I mean, I don't think we can tell them build, because I don't think anybody's gonna commit to any building right now, and
That ain't no time soon.
you're looking
No,
way
and
into
this,
next year.
and this would help them for what you just said, because as long as this thing is still in limbo, we don't know which direction the economy is gonna go. This just gives them the leeway to say, hey, for the time being, I'll do it, but we have a limit that within 2 years, if my business blows up, then I'm gonna have to make an investment on a building.
also just remember, and maybe Chief's not here to hear me, but these also make good hiding spaces for criminal activity, just FYI. That's my opinion.
Well, we got a good investigator.
Case, I need a motion, please.
I make the motion that we approve ordinance 20-05-01 regarding shipping containers. First reading by Mr. Donnie McKinney, Chief Building Official.
Second.
Second, Mayor.
Case, I have a motion by Councilman Santana, second by Councilman Reyes, to approve ordinance 20-05-01 regarding shipping containers, first reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. One opposed. Record show that Ms. Councilwoman Baca against. Motion passes.
Mayor and Council, thank you very much.
Thank you, Donnie.
Thank you.
Number 4, discuss consider resolution 20-05-02R, proposed changes to the personnel handbook. Ms. Kristen?
Mayor and Council, Kristen Irie, the HR Director for the city. I have 2 sections of the handbook that, well, I know it's in front of you and we can all read. I'm going to read it for the record. The first one is comp time. Exempt employees do not accrue comp time, and salaried employees must work at least a half day to not be charged with a day of personal leave usage. Since extra hours worked occurs intermittently, so must any partial days be taken. It is expected that exempt salaried employees will routinely work more than 40 hours per week as dedicated public servants. That's the section as it is in the handbook now. The current wording is in direct contradiction of our approved PTO policy that permits time to be taken in 1-hour increments. It penalizes exempt employees, and it may actually violate the Fair Labor Standards Act, the federal law, and it also exposes the city to potential liability of discrimination claims. Supervisors have discretion, and they usually use the discretion but the policy that we have in place is in violation of federal law. It's a potential violation of federal law for comp time. The second one is our bereavement leave policy. Again, I will read that in full for the record. All full-time, non-probationary employees are eligible to receive up to 3 days of paid bereavement leave in the event they miss regularly scheduled work days due to the death or funeral of a member of the employee's immediate family. Your immediate family includes your spouse, parent, step-parent, child, stepchild, siblings, step-siblings, and half-siblings, grandparent, grandchild, mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, and or sister-in-law. Employees may not take more than 3 funeral days leave in any 1 year, and multiple days are only granted if the funeral is held more than 200 miles from the town of Pecos City. Employees should notify Human Resource Department and their immediate supervisor as soon as possible regarding all time off in connection with the death of one of the above listed family members, and employees may use any available PTO during bereavement leave. This statement is again in direct contradiction of approved policy providing eligible employees with 3 days of paid bereavement leave. The sentence at the end, multiple days are only granted if the funeral is held more than 200 miles from the town of Pecos City, is what needs to be removed. I mean, it's obvious, it's contradicting above that you get 3 paid days of bereavement leave, but only if the funeral is 200 miles away. So I don't think that's very fair to employees, especially if they're already grieving because they've lost an immediate family member. And then they have to prove that the funeral is 200 miles away to get the 2 extra days. So I don't think that's appropriate at all. That's why I want to bring it to your attention. And there's a resolution before you to make the 2 changes. So, any questions I can answer?
We don't pay comp time, correct?
We do
I mean,
not.
we don't offer, because it's overtime.
We have to pay overtime. If you are non-exempt, you have to pay overtime. There are very small exceptions where comp time's permissible, and it usually has a lot more to do with union contracts than anything else. There's some very small exceptions for government employees where we could pay comp time, but you also get into a lot of problems with taxation. You get into problems with discrimination, and potential various violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act. So if someone is worked, they should be paid for those hours. If it's overtime, it is approved. We have a very strict policy that all overtime must be approved in advance. So we know if someone has worked those hours, they should be paid those hours because it's approved time worked.
Yeah. I know at the prison, they'll check you on Thursday and they'll send you an email telling you what time you should leave because you put in a few minutes here, a few minutes there, so.
Right.
And ours is salary, if I work half a day, that's fine, I get paid my full day because I know eventually somewhere I'm gonna work more than like 40, so.
Absolutely. If you work 1 hour as a salaried employee, you have to be paid for the full day. We would take PTO, but if a salaried employee doesn't have any PTO, we still would have to pay them. So you're penalizing a salaried employee who does have PTO. If they have to, because they're called into work for an hour for an emergency, they have to handle something, they're paid that whole day. So, they can take PTO in hour increments, which is what our general policy is. And if someone takes time off from work, we can require them to use PTO. But you're penalizing exempt employees mostly with this, where if they don't work 4 hours, they have to take a whole day of PTO versus taking it in increments.
And that's what I do with work. Now that I'm salaried, put more hours in than what I did before. But I'll go in Friday morning at 7 o'clock.
Sure.
I have a doctor's appointment at 10, I leave and I'm gone for the rest of the day because I've already put 40 hours in my first 3 days.
Yeah, and our supervisors have the discretion to manage their department appropriately. They know who's working more hours and who's doing what, and we manage the overtime, we manage the hours worked, but comp time is generally illegal, and we don't use it at all. And the sentences,
On a funeral, in my company, we get 3 days funeral for the ones that you listed, and then a day for an aunt and uncle.
Right.
So, a funeral day. I'm surprised that that one, the 200 miles, is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. That's what I'm going to bring it to
Call
your
them and
attention.
tell them, move the funeral 200 miles. Okay, go ahead, I need a motion and,
Mayor, make a motion to approve resolution 20-05-02R, proposed changes to personal handbook as presented by Christie Curry.
And in second,
I'll second.
okay, a motion by Councilman Orona, second by Councilman Saldana, to propose changes to personal handbook, resolution 20-05-02R as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Christie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 5, discuss, consider accepting the fourth quarter 2019 investment report. Ms. Melanie?
Good evening, Melanie Purcell, Finance Director. We have a few things on here. The investment report is traditionally been presented to the council, treating our accounts as if they are truly interest-bearing investments. The majority of our accounts are actually transactional checking accounts, with the exception of the tax pool accounts, which are more traditional investment. We're still seeing, as of December, we were seeing a fairly stable 2.5 to 2.7% coming out of tax pool. You see the report says 2.59. Pretty competitive with standard CDs, however, provides a greater liquidity than a standard banking CD. The other ones, the interest earned typically pays our fees with West Texas National Bank. That's where the majority of the accounts are. Wanted to make a note that coming future reports, you will see a more traditional treasurer's cash report as opposed to an investment report, in which you'll be able to see the inflows, the outflows, and the granted interest rate. Simply to clarify this, because what you have in front of you, well, it's called an investment report, because of the nature of our accounts, it's a little bit difficult to talk about book versus market value and things like that. All of our items are book and market are identical. Any questions?
Okay. Any motion to approve?
So this
Is there a motion?
That's a question.
Oh, it's a question?
Because there's a second page and it's sideways, so we just trying to see it.
Small print.
No, it came out sideways.
So all these reports, all these, totals are as of December 31st.
Yes, ma'am. So we'll be bringing the next two, we're catching it up. I'm very proud of how much progress we've made in starting to catch up. But we're now actually in the current fiscal year, so that's good progress. And we'll be bringing forward the treasurer's reports in the future.
Motion? Need a motion?
Mayor, make a motion to approve accepting the fourth quarter 2019 investment report as presented by Melanie Purcell, Finance Director.
Second?
You got your...
Yeah, a motion by Councilman Orona, second by Councilman Tellez to approve accepting the fourth quarter 2019 investment report as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Melanie. Discuss, consider resolution 20-04-02R, approving a waiver for the payment in lieu of taxes pilot for fiscal year 2019-2020 with the Pecos Housing Authority. Ms. Melanie?
Melanie Purcell, Finance Director. What we have in front of you is bringing back the pilot request from the Housing Authority, Pecos Housing Authority. They have requested a continuation of their waiver for the past at least 10 years, so we have at least anecdotally considerably longer than that. They have asked that the city waive the payment in lieu of taxes. Payment in lieu of taxes is considered to be a discounted property tax rate, and they've asked to waive that to zero. My recommendation is that the council deny this, recognizing that other citizens must pay at least something, regardless of their income. Philosophically, I object to having any pocket of residents completely exempted from contribution to general services. That being said, if you're not comfortable with that, the request that I have in here is that we address 2019 and 2020. The Pecos Housing Authority is asking in arrears, so their fiscal year has already closed, and it may cause some hardship to try and come and pay us back now that that fiscal year is closed, even though the funds were owed. If you were to grant them the waiver for 19, I would ask that you not do so for 20, but regardless, to make a decision regarding FY20 at this time.
That's been a tradition, more or less, hasn't it?
They provide the last time we met, we asked for them to provide some documentation as far as, rent increases and.
So what we did receive was their audit and their budget, and it does give us at least the required information per the agreement. I did not receive, they indicated that they had dropped off history, I have not located that. So I don't have a history of their pattern, other than I did find one from 2011, and obviously the original calculations showed that the pilot payment was to be $5,400 and the taxes were $9,000. So they had, at that time, it was a considerable discount. And this also, depending on, we do not have verified appraised values because they have not been appraised in a long time. They report to HUD the pilot at $5 million property value. So that would be approximately $30,000. And the pilot, they're saying is 26.9, I believe. 26.699.
I was contacted that they sent out a letter to each one, or to the city. Did we get it?
I have not located those. So unfortunately, I requested 10 years of history. They said that Mr. Salcido indicated that he had provided at least 8 years. I have not located those. So in fairness, I can't say yes or no. I'm not going to say he didn't. I just have not.
I got a call and they asked me, hey, did you, wondering why we hadn't responded. I said, I know what you're talking about. Because I never got a letter or any of us. In fact, I went and looked in our, because he said he mailed them right after the initial time that we dealt with it when we were downstairs. That's when it came up. So I was just wondering what happened to
reduced
the
water rate, just a little above resident. But, I haven't talked to him. He called me to meet me, but I haven't had a chance to sit down with him. The thing is that, when you don't have to pay for 10, 12 years,
30 years.
I just don't understand, because John it's not his property, he just runs it, he's a manager. So, and I understand maybe there's something, a bonus or something, maybe he can get this done, but I think that, I know the fact that they've raised rents out there, so it's not like they're not making money. But again, you are the voting guys. I think that enough is enough, and right now we need a little bit of money and a little bit of help.
What do they just have one master meter for water and sewer, or does each apartment have a?
There's like 7 accounts, but it's a master meter per building.
Per building?
So in their declaration, I apologize.
No, go ahead.
The declaration to HUD includes their total dollars collected less the utilities, because the utilities are considered a reimbursement back against the cost. And then the $269,000 is their rent income. So they roll their utility payments into their rent payments that are received from their renters.
Do you know if payment in lieu of taxes would be a reimbursable amount to HUD?
They do have to declare it. And so, interestingly, the declaration has that, and it does not indicate that pilot has been waived historically.
How much would the taxes be for this year?
Per their calculations, approximately $30,000.
Can I read you a partial text that Mr. Salcido sent me? If you'll, my kids make fun of my phone.
I'm gonna make fun
They all
of
have smartphones. I said, well, I have a dumb phone.
My mother has one.
Oh, okay.
Just like that.
I have not seen one
I
of
didn't
those.
say that word.
No blow. No blow.
It's a jitterbug.
I didn't say anything. That's why
It's a
I was
council
wondering.
prerogative.
You can get text from them.
That's it. I showed my mom the other day, look man, this is what everybody said for Mother's Day. She's good. I said, give me my phone back. No, I can't yet. I said, see, we can get you one of these phones. Consumer cellular. You got one?
He already says, Mr. Tellez, please understand that I am okay with a yes or a no on the pilot waiver. I won't read the rest because it's,
Okay.
I'll read it to y'all personally, the rest.
You've been here how many years? In this company?
Well, see, I've been here 25 years, 26.
In
And we've never charged
in
them.
recognition of his tenure, can we get him a new phone?
Right.
When we're,
Part of that internet.
if y'all, whoever was here in 2019 when he requested the waiver, the ex-mayor was here, and she questioned it, but she didn't bring anything of substance behind
The question.
the question. If we'd have had
That-
what we have now, it would have been different. But, as far as I know, I've been here 26 years, we have never charged them. We've always waived the fee.
Yeah.
But they've gotten away with fire protection, police protection, for at least what,
Since its inception?
sorry,
Since its inception,
Right.
since it was made.
since it was back in '66. So it's not fair to the rest of the community who have to pay taxes to receive fire and police protection. That's my opinion.
Okay.
And $30,000, I was just in the top of my head,
Mhm.
how many tenants do they have? You split that up, it's not gonna be a lot for them.
Right.
You know, and it's about, what is its value? You know,
5 million is what they're
That's the
reporting.
list of, that's the reported value.
Okay.
It's time to pay.
Okay,
That's
so,
my opinion.
Yep.
do I have a motion for number 6?
Now, if,
Is that a
I
motion?
guess I'll play devil's advocate here for a little bit. If we were to ask of them to pay it, and I guess that wouldn't be our business, right, but what are the chances that they're gonna raise rent for their, tenants?
That'd be up to them.
And if we can't barely, if we as a city can barely live off of this COVID, how are the tenants going to live if they raise their rent? We have to think about that too.
Okay.
That's why, okay,
Yeah.
sorry. That's why we asked them to, a scale of what the rent has been. It's been increasing. I know it's not
Yeah.
$500. It's more than that. Their rent is.
It's more than that?
Yeah, it's more. It's not low income, sorry. It's not low income housing. It's,
Okay, so.
And I'm just, you
No, I
know.
understand what you're saying, so what I propose this, okay, for this year, cut it in half, 15,000, but next year it's gonna go the full, from here forward. This is COVID time, I'm just being,
So can I ask,
yes ma'am,
which year do you need by this year?
2020.
So he's asking for the waiver for last year, which is
2019.
2019, and I'm asking you to make a decision for 20.
So for
Half
2019.
for 19 and total for 20.
Well, we're still, 2020, we're still under this COVID
I
umbrella.
mean, he's not waiving rent.
No, that's
I don't
true.
think he's not
Cutting them slack.
giving them any
And
free
don't-
months.
Reductions.
You know what I mean? I don't think maybe an extension, but I don't think he's not charging them rent during this
So I
time.
propose for the 19 tax, 15,000, for 2020, 20,000, and next year it'll hit the 30,000, or whatever is owed. That's my proposal.
You're saying 15
For
off
what?
of the guesstimates that they're giving,
For
Melanie.
For 2019,
property taxes.
yeah, half of
So
it.
it would actually have to be against the pilot. So we have a standing agreement that says that pilot is 26,699.
Okay.
So it would be whatever adjustment against
Half.
that, not against the taxes.
Yes. That's my proposal, but that's just
And then you said 2020 what?
20,000, or whatever the amount would be in comparison to.
27.
Okay, so 2020 not give them the pipe.
No, for 2020, for 2021, it's gonna be full, whatever he owes, for 2021,
So 2019 and 2020, it's partial.
partial. Half,
So-
half of whatever's owed.
Let me pare it back for a second, make sure I
Yeah.
got very specific. For 19, 50%, for 20, 3/4, 75%.
Yep.
And then for 21, the expectation would be
100%.
100% of the
Yes,
pilot.
that's my proposal.
Sounds fair.
That way he can be ready and, you know, I mean, and if
Yeah,
you.
because I mean, we gave them a cut in water rate, so
Yeah.
we should be able to. do
Afford that, yeah. And like Mr. Hill was saying, you know, if it's low income, but he's not really affording his tenants that low income, then it's like a apartment complex, full rate, you know, then eventually, gonna have to.
And so what's on the table is 2019, 50%, 2020, 75%, 2021, 100%.
And moving
That's what
forward.
you have, Ms. Melanie?
That's what I have.
And moving forward.
Okay, need a motion if you want that.
Yeah, make a motion that, let me put my glasses on so I can read. Approving a waiver for the payment in lieu of taxes with, stipulations that for the 2019, 50% of the taxes will be paid. For 2020, it'll be 75%, and from 2021 moving forward will be 100%.
Second.
I'll second.
Second.
On pilot.
Mallory.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilman Rona, second by Councilwoman Trujillo.
And if I may say something, if we can always come back and visit this in a later year or whatever, and be modified or whatever, but for right now, it's what I'm suggesting, so, anyway, go ahead.
Okay. So we are approving, right?
Yes.
Is this
Yeah.
what we wanna say, Ms. Melanie? We're approving the waiver of the payment in lieu of taxes for fiscal 2019, 50%, 2020, 75%, 21, 100%.
So the waiver is for the net of that.
Yes.
First year's 50, second year's 25, 0 thereafter.
So we,
Yes.
sounds good?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Melanie.
Thank you.
Does this property also include the old, the further ones east? The new ones over here by Cactus and all that area, right there?
Yes.
The old, and then it includes also the far, the ones in the farm labor projects?
Yes.
It's got a lot of tenants.
A lot.
All right, number 7, discuss consider resolution 20-05-03R, entering into an agreement with the governmental capital for a vehicle and equipment loan in the amount of $1,621,558 for the purchase of 3 trash trucks, 2 12-yard dump trucks, 1 6-yard dump truck, and 1 Baku sewer vacuum truck. Ms. Barca?
Thank you, Melanie Purcell, Finance Director. As you may remember us talking about frequently is the need to catch up our fleet. We have a number of these vehicles actually that are being replaced by this proposal that are no longer functional. The rest of them are just beyond their useful life. The one exception would be adding a trash truck so that we could actually expand our service and be more aggressive in that, and that we can talk about further. The idea of entering into the finance agreement or the finance contract with government capital is to spread the payments over a 5-year period, comparable to what we would do under a lease purchase agreement, allowing us to buy more vehicles at this time and also spread it out over that time frame at a much more competitive rate. What we found when we requested proposals from the vendors directly for the lease purchase is the rates were 2 to 3 times. So they were asking for 7 to 8%, and this is a 2.8. So it's actually it's just over 2%, 207. So obviously much more competitive. It helps the city be more flexible in how we respond to our financial needs, especially in the fleet area, for the next 5 years. The funds are funded both in terms of cash flow, as we had set aside cash last year for the dump trucks, and for had put in for this year the lease payments for the other trucks, so it would allow us to actually conserve cash and spread it out over that time frame, with hopefully revenues bouncing back and us feeling a little more comfortable as we go forward. So that is the proposal to actually enter into the financing agreement. That is this portion. It is a total of $1.6 million.
If I read correctly, we don't make the first payment until next year?
Yes, sir.
I like that.
Because it's a big cushion.
It allows us to retain that cash balance.
How soon would these purchases, when would these purchases be made?
They would be immediate,
Immediate.
assuming you approve them later on.
So, how many trash trucks do we have right now?
Working?
2?
Well, we have 4 trucks and 4 routes, meaning we have no backup. And so when one trash truck goes down, we're covering the entire city with 3. As of this moment, I have 2 trucks operating and 2 trucks down in the shop. So we're trying to cover the entire community with 2 trucks. And one of the things that, when we've had this conversation, as the community has grown, the volume of solid waste that's being generated has grown, and our capacity to collect it has not.
Yeah.
And so buying 3 trucks it actually accomplishes 2 things for us. Number one, it lets me add a 5th route, which increases my capacity to collect the trash that's being generated. Second thing it does is this is a different style of trash can. If you'll notice right now, every can in town is a metal can with a metal floor, and most of them are sitting in the alleys or sitting on a dirt surface. and the bottoms rot out of these cans constantly. We are moving to a high-density polyurethane, HDPE, plastic can that is comparable in size, but it's half the cost to buy the can, and they don't rot out from the soil conditions and the waste that's being put in them. So the cans are half the cost and should last longer, but additionally the trucks that pick them up are a different kind of mechanical system. And if you've done maintenance on mechanical systems, the more moving parts you have, the more potential you have for failure. Well, the trucks we have right now are the most mechanically complex that you can get, and the industry's moving away from the style of truck we have right now to this rapid rail truck. So it's fewer moving parts, and it's actually faster to pick up and service the can. And so if we can service the cans faster with more routes and have fewer failures of the can themselves, I think we should be able to turn the corner and see an improvement in service that we're delivering to the community.
And in saying that, are we gonna be changing our trash cans little by little?
We're doing 3 routes, and so each route is approximately 500 cans. And so we have in the budget to purchase 1,500 of this new style of can.
Okay.
And we can retool 3 routes with the 3 new style trucks, and hopefully see some major improvements to our residential collection.
Good. Good.
That's
And
our
then the other 2, the 2 that are working right now, keep them until they.
Well, and as soon as we can replace them with the new style truck, then we'll replace the cans on those routes.
Okay.
Commercial cans typically will always be metal. So we'll have some trucks that pick up the metal cans because that's usually, the commercial dumpsters are 4 yard or larger, and the residentials are 3 yards. And so we'll probably continue to have some trucks that service metal cans on the commercial routes. But right now, with only 4 trucks and 4 routes, residential and commercial accounts are all mixed together. And so that's one of the reasons why we miss cans, is because we pick up residentials once a week. Well, some of the commercials we pick up 5 times a week. And so as the drivers are bouncing from commercial to residential to commercial to residential, they miss cans. So I don't want to make excuses for them, we just have to improve our processes.
Do we have the personnel?
We do, yes. We've just added 2 more drivers. So I've got 4 trucks and 4 drivers. I've added 2 more drivers and I'm only adding 1 more route. And so that gives me a floater, because as it stands right now, my drivers can't take vacation and we don't let them get sick. And so we're not staffed correctly. And so we've just moved 2 CDL drivers into trash from other departments, and they're going to start learning to drive the routes this month. So,
Yeah, that's one thing that we need is that.
Question, a 3 yard dumpster equates to how many pounds?
depends on what you put in it.
Yeah, so here's my point, because, okay, so let's say, give me a number. I'm just good.
Like 1.
Off the top of my head, I don't even have a guess.
Okay, but let's say 3 yard dumpster can hold 2,000 pounds.
Yeah.
These trucks are rated to pick up just that kind of weight, depending on the size of the dumpster, right?
Exactly.
And here's what I'm getting at. People tend to throw things that shouldn't be in that thing and overweigh them, hence breaking the mechanism of the dump truck.
Yes.
And this is what taxpayers need to understand. Learn to throw things where they belong, because our taxes are going to buy more trucks being downtime because of not being properly, used, thank you. And because people throw things that shouldn't be in the dumpster. Sometimes I've seen motors or small pumps in the trash can.
A dumpster full of dirt is too heavy.
Yes, sir.
A dumpster full of concrete and construction debris is too heavy. You also see they'll put 2x4s and lumber.
Mhm.
Well, if we can pick it up, but once it ends up in the bed of the truck, it can destroy the hydraulics as it tries to compress the trash.
And that's
so
we need to educate the people that we can better use tax money if we take care of our equipment, but it also comes from the taxpayers, the residents of
Responsibility to dispose of their-
Thank you, that's the right word. So it's just a matter of people caring all the way around. And then they wonder why you spend so much money on trucks. Well, there's the
Yeah,
root cause.
because we'll get the phone call,
Where
they
there's a
didn't
drop
pick up my
down.
trash.
Yeah, exactly. When
most of the calls we get about "you missed my can" is because either there's stuff in the can that's not supposed to be there, or someone's parked in front of the can and the truck can't get to it. Most of the calls we get, there's a reason we didn't pick it up. There are some that we just missed the route, but most of the time, there's a reason that the,
When you got them bouncing all over the place, it's kinda hard to remember, hey, I left that one over there.
Did you know at one time, excuse me for bringing this up, we had those 50-gallon barrels, and that's what, we had the driver and two guys
In the back
working on
seat.
the outside,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
they would pick up the cans and dump it in the
Walking
truck.
truck.
My dad had a small grocery store, and they made him build it was about 10 by 8 trash can out of wood with metal, with the wooden lids on it. So we dumped the trash in the container, but then the city employee would have to go in and then pull it out.
Right, just fish it out.
Wow.
well,
They didn't get paid enough.
one of the things that this new style of truck allows us to do also is there's been some conversation. I want to clearly say to the public, we are not making this transition right now. But a lot of solid waste companies are moving to the individual rollouts.
Bigger cities already.
This truck can pick up both kinds of cans. And so it allows us the flexibility. Where we can put the dumpsters in the alley, that is the most efficient place to collect the trash. However, there's several neighborhoods where there is no alley, and so the big cans are out front on the street. It doesn't look good, and it is an invitation for other people to drive by and use your can.
Right.
In those applications, typically it is better for them to have an individual rollout, so nobody else is using their can, and we don't have trash littered all over the street in front of the homes.
And those are also good because they don't realize how much waste they throw until they have something like that. They
Yeah.
minimize their waste.
That's true.
They'll be careful throwing what they throw in the dumpster.
My daughter lives in Austin, and they have a recyclable container,
And trash.
and
Yeah.
My brother has that in
Some
Houston.
people are very defensive about.
and they compost.
And you just
and
take
they
it out
reduce
on the day that
they
they
reduce
come
it,
back,
right?
they
My
take it back
neighbors
in.
that come out just to see what you're throwing.
Well, so we're not making this transition right now, but the trucks we're buying can pick up both styles. And so we don't have to make another capital investment in the future should we change our strategy.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Harry.
Good job.
Okay, in a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 20-05-03R, enter into an agreement with the government capital for a vehicle and equipment loan in the amount of $1,621,558 for the purchase of 3 trash trucks, 2 12-yard dump trucks, 1 6-yard dump truck, and 1 sewer vacuum truck, as presented by the finance director, Ms. Melanie Purcell.
Second?
Second.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilman Saldana, second by Councilman Days, to approve the agreement with government capital as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 8,
The guys, thank you very much.
thank you, Harry.
They're currently using backhoes to haul dirt across town, and it's not very effective. So thank you for the dump trucks.
So don't get behind us.
Okay, number 8, discuss consider resolution 20-05-04 ABR, budget amendments. Ms. Melanie?
Okay, what we have here is the resolution amending the FY 19-20 budget to approve the use of $100,000 in retained earnings in the residential revolving loan fund for the purpose of funding the demolition of dilapidated buildings. The city has funded this revolving loan fund. We currently have 2 loans outstanding, and there is sufficient balance in there to fund this initiative. There's been a lot of effort by council to get the process going so that we can actually go ahead and condemn and demolish the properties. This would allow us to fund that from that fund, but retain any proceeds back into that fund. So similar to the loan, it would actually be kind of the equivalency in doing the liens against the properties for the demolition. At this point, we have not selected a contractor. This simply establishes the ability to do that within that fund for $100,000.
Where are the buildings?
Pardon?
Where are the buildings?
They're the ones that have been,
It's 17
identified.
different locations.
The ones that have been on the list for demolition? Okay.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yep.
and that has not been, defined
Okay.
at this point. The second item is to approve the use of $1,471,550 in planned capital improvements in the sanitation funds for the purpose of funding trash bins, landfill engineering, and sanitation operating reserve. So currently, we had established, council had adopted the budget with $3 million set aside for the transfer station. It is coming in under budget, and we're able to not have to do quite as much as we had planned. This will allow us then to use those funds originally set aside for that purpose in a capital project for the purpose of buying the bins associated with the rapid rail trucks, beginning the process, the engineering necessary to determine the location and beginning for a new landfill, because that is an extensive near-decade process, but we need to get started on it. And then also ensuring that the sanitation fund has an adequate operating reserve. Coming into it, because this fund was established in the current year, we knew that it was going to have an incredibly low balance. This is an opportunity to preserve and protect the stability of that fund. So that is the second item.
Okay, motion?
One quick question. On the electrical side, transformers there at for the lift station, transfer station. We all applied for upgrading those transformers.
Yeah, I filled out the Form 255, and Reeves County Electric's the sub, they call electric.
Just curious. Spend many a time out there refusing transformers.
I got another question. That building that they just knocked down over here,
K Motel?
is that, we knocked it down or the company? Or whoever wanted the property?
This is for the Dollar General store.
Yeah,
Okay, so they paid for
the
it.
property
Yeah.
owner
Yeah.
did,
Oh, did,
yeah,
okay.
did all that. Yeah. As far as the demolition of these properties, do we, have the city personnel do that, or do we hire a contractor?
So that part has not been finalized.
Okay.
I know that Mr. McKinney is seeking out quotes and then looking at the work demand on current staff as opposed to those quotes. Then we will bring back a contract for council to approve or let you know that it's going to be brought in-house.
Councilor, I talked with Mr. McKinney, and these buildings, or the cost of demolishing these buildings will go into that new process y'all authorized that started to go through municipal court, so that we'll eventually be able to have a title to it to sell it and get it back on taxes.
May I make a motion that we approve resolution 20-05-04 A through B presented by Melanie Purcell, our finance director.
Second?
Second.
I look up
Ms.
because I think you're
Valerie.
gonna beat me.
Ms. Valerie.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilman Verona,
I got
seconded
it.
by Councilwoman Keo
Ladies first.
to accept resolution 20-05-04 A through BR. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 9, discuss consider resolution 20-05-05 A through F, approving various purchases. Ms. Melanie?
Okay, so thank you very much for approving the financing of this particular purchase. These are the trash trucks for the sanitation fund. They are a significant investment of $904,854. The VACON actually replaces our sewer jet truck. Actually, we do not have an operating one right this moment, so we are utilizing contractors. So this is definitely something we want to pursue quickly. $392,741 in the utility fund, $392,741. The two 12-yard dump trucks are, one is actually in the sanitation fund and one is in the utility fund, $227,142.40. The 6-yard dump truck is $96,819.80, and that would be in the utility fund for the water and sewer department. The letter E, resolution 2005-05E, purchase a scanning tool total station, is for utilizing its survey equipment related to pulling in data into the GIS so that we can actually identify initially and particularly ADA locations. So we refer to them as that. It is the Americans with Disability Act. The requirements are that we establish an inventory of potential barriers to access per the definitions provided under the ADA. We need to establish this. It was approved by the council in the budget for $150,000. This allows us to actually do it much more affordably and spread it out over a couple of years while still providing evidence of good faith that we are trying to address and by identifying what we have available. It will also, the reason we are recommending this particular item as opposed to the other ones that quoted a slightly cheaper price is its capacity to be used in forensics and other activities. It's actually a much more comprehensive solution. And that is with Altera, otherwise known as Trimble, so they have an AK doing business as. The last item is a blanket purchase order with Longweaver and Manning for real estate legal services. This is related to the condemnation activities and annexation activities over the past year or so. Those have now reached a point where it needs to come to City Council for approval and to complete those activities. I believe there's some additional work that needs to be completed and it will bring us to our purchasing limit. So we want to ensure that we have approval of the council.
And we have the funds to pay for this.
Yes, sir.
I don't think she'd be there with it.
It would not be in front of you.
Yeah, I'm not questioning you.
Mr. Sorensen,
I'm just making
Mr.
sure.
Elizabeth can
I'm just
attest
making
to.
sure.
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, second?
I make the motion to accept resolution number 2505-05 A through F are approving various purchases as presented by Melanie Purcell, our finance director.
Second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Perez, second by Councilman Baca to approve resolution 20-05-05 A through F R. Approving various purchases. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Can we take a break?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody need a break? Like just small hour break.
Okay, we're gonna take we'll take a small break. Time is 7:09.
It's nice. Ándale, mi patrón.
I'm coming. I had to go turn to the club.
Oye, te va a subir más.
I know, it's gonna go up.
Ahora sabe más.
Ay,
Así me caigo.
To go to the rancho.
Uno nomás.
See my
Eso no.
tacos.
Ese es David, ese no.
Ese no,
I ain't giving that one
Me
away.
muerda la mano.
No, thank you. You've had enough.
Excuse me.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. Time is 7:19. So that all councilwomen are present. On to number 10, discuss consider resolution 20-0506R, accepting proposal changes to the interlocal agreement for ambulance service with the Reeves County Emergency Service District Number 2 concerning the start date for reimbursement of service. Mr. Howdy.
Mayor, Council, Howdy Lisenby, Assistant City Manager. Several meetings ago, we brought a resolution and an interlocal agreement between the city and the Emergency Services District Number 2, in which we requested that the ESD take on the cost of the ambulance service and reimburse the city for the costs that have incurred from October 1 to now. And so that interlocal agreement was approved by council. We took it to the ESD board, and they approved it with one change. They said that since they didn't have any funds until December, that they wanted to start the reimbursement in December rather than October. And so they approved an interlocal agreement reimbursing the city for ambulance expenses and assuming the expenses moving forward from December 1st to current instead of October 1st. So that requires it to come back to y'all since it was modified. And so we're just requesting that you approve this revision to the interlocal agreement so that we can begin to get reimbursements from the ESD. One of the reasons this is important is because our citizens are effectively paying twice. There is a property tax being levied across the entire county, which includes our citizens, but we also have an ambulance fee that's being charged to commercial and apartment and hotel and man camps. And so while the residential customers aren't directly paying the fee, they're spending money at the commercial businesses, which are then paying the fee, so it's trickling down. So our intent is to stop our citizens from having to double pay for the EMS services.
Okay. Need a motion?
I'll make the motion to consider resolution number 20-05-06R, accepting a proposed change to the interlocal agreement for ambulance services with Reeves County Emergency Service District Number 2, and concerning the start date for reimbursement of services as presented by Howdy Lisenby, Assistant City Manager.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Reyes, second by Councilwoman Trujillo, to accept the proposed changes for the interlocal agreement for ambulance service with Reeves County Emergency Service District 2 concerning the start date for reimbursement of service. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Excuse me. Number
What will
11.
happen to our, excuse me, I'm sorry, Mayor, what's gonna happen to our ambulances?
We haven't determined that yet, so at this point, they're still owned by the city
I see.
and being used by MetroCare as part of the First Life, as part of the agreement, because the contract is still between the city and the provider, and so the ESD is just going to reimburse us for the cost that we pay to the provider.
When's the contract up between us and First?
We extended it last year,
Mhm.
and so there's, I think, about 16 to 18 months left on that contract. So we've got some time to figure out how we want to dispose of the ambulances. We'll probably sell them to the ESD, but we don't have to figure that out right now.
I understand.
Yes, sir. Good
I
question.
just thought I'd ask.
It's a good question.
We're going to go to number 11, discuss consider resolution 20-0507R, eliminating the ambulance fee and collection thereof effective May 31st, 2020. Mr. Howard?
Mayor, Council, again, Howdy Lisenby, Assistant City Manager. This item is directly related to the one we just finished. And so in our master schedule fee, there's an ambulance fee that's charged to commercials. to apartments, hotels, and man camps. And this removes that fee and allows us to pull it off of the billing system so that it's no longer being charged. We request that it be effective May 31st, just so that we've got time to go in the billing system and make those changes. It's not like you can push a button and you gotta go in and redo the billing system, so we need a little bit of time to make that effective, and so that's what we're asking for the May 31st.
And there's plenty of time.
If that's plenty of time, yes, sir. And so I also want to add that there is nothing changing to the ambulance service as it's being provided to our citizens right now. The provider stays the same, their contract with the city stays the same. The only thing that's changing is who's writing the check. But the people manning the trucks are the same, the service is the same. We're not making any changes to the service. It's just who writes the check. That's what we're changing.
May I make a motion we approve resolution 20-05-07R, eliminating the ambulance fee and collection thereof effective May 31st, 2020, as presented by Howdy Listenby, City Manager.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Rodona, second by Councilman Saldana, to approve resolution 20-05-07R, eliminating the ambulance fee and collection thereof effective May 31st, 2020. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
One question there, I'm sorry. What is the coverage area, the whole county right now?
Well, yes, with an asterisk. The agreement the city has with First Flight is to provide coverage for the city. But then there's an interlocal agreement between the city and the county so that the provider that's providing our service also provides coverage to the county. So the county contributes some cost as well for the coverage out in their part. The asterisk is now down in Balmorhea, they have changed providers. And so there's a new provider, I think it's OHSI, that provides just for Balmorhea. But First Flight still provides for Pecos, Toya, and the rest of the county. And so
And then one time we were serving part of Ward County, will we still be doing that?
that's probably part of the interlocal agreement for Barstow. I would believe that still remains in effect.
But then, what was the one north? Not
Orla?
Orla.
Mentone?
Mentone. Somewhere that they weren't paying the fees or.
Yeah,
It's,
we haven't
another
served them
county.
for about 2 years now.
Okay.
It's been about 2 years now since we've served them.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Number 12, discuss consider resolution 20-05-08R, awarding East Elevated Storage Tank Rehabilitation Project to Texas Tank Service for the amount of $387,695. Mr. Lindsay?
Mayor, Council, again, it's Howdy Lisenby, Assistant City Manager. This is a project that we've been working on for a while. As you're aware, we have 4 elevated storage tanks, or water towers as people call them, around town. And the TCEQ requires, TCEQ is Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, not everyone knows the jargon. They require that these tanks be inspected annually. So we get a report every year of the condition of these tanks. And as the reports begin to identify areas of concern, we will initiate a rehab project. Basically, we're repainting. And so the bulk of this project is going to be repaint the east water tower by Saragossa Park. There are some minor improvements to the ladder. I think there's a vent up on the roof that they're just changing some screening on. So there's a few things in addition to painting, but the bulk of this is going to be strip it down and repaint it. The reason that's important is water is essential for life. You have to have it, but also over time, water can become quite corrosive to metal. So there has to be a coating on the inside and on the outside of the tank to preserve the integrity of the metal that's holding all of that water and the pressure of our system. And so it's critical that you paint on a fairly routine basis. We bid this out and had 4 bidders submit qualified bids. Texas Tank Services was low bid at $387,695. Next low bid came in at $586,000 and change. After that was $596,000 and change, and then $976,000. So the bids were all over the place. But the fact that low bid was $200,000 cheaper causes some questions to be asked. And so our engineers went in and evaluated what they submitted. We've actually talked to the company because there's some things that they're doing at considerably cheaper cost than anybody else. They plan to do the work, it's in their bid, they will perform the work to spec, they're just saying they can do it cheaper than the other companies.
Where they're
Do they have a
from?
good background?
Do what?
Where are they from and do they have a good background?
They're from Texas, White House, Texas, I believe. And they do have references that have been checked and have checked out. One of the things, it's not a major concern, but we asked for 5 examples of tanks this size, and they had 3. But I'm not necessarily gonna disqualify someone because they've only done 3 instead of 5. And then there's equipment that we asked them to list that they have, and they didn't say they have the equipment, but we've talked to them and they plan to rent it. So they didn't want to buy the equipment, have it sitting in the yard all the time. When they need it, they rent it and use it for the job. So we feel that they'll be able to do the work and saves us $200,000. So we're just going to watch them close and make sure they do it right, and hopefully save $200,000.
Maybe use them again.
So that's,
Yeah.
that's a big difference between $384,000, $500, and then the $900.
$976,000. Yeah. Yeah. It was. I think they're busy and didn't really want the work. They're also from Minnesota.
From Minnesota, they're
So
overpaying for them to
how
move.
often do you think these tanks should be looked at, to be worked on like this, or, well, I forgot the next part of my question, but I might be done.
In my experience, you need to be repainting towers at least every 10 to 15 years. And it's been significantly longer than that since this tank and the west tank have been painted. So once we complete this on the east tank, we're then going to move to the west tank over by the high school and start the process again, because they both need a good coat of paint. It's been a long time since they've got any TLC.
Do they have a time frame? I'm just curious.
Well,
Summer's coming up and
we're gonna see if they can wait until the end of summer to get started, because you gotta pull the tank offline. And the tank on the east side, we would prefer not to pull it offline in the peak time of summer.
Yeah.
So we're gonna ask that they wait till the end of summer to actually mobilize and start so that we can get into the fall. But the budget for the west tank is gonna be in the next year's proposed budget. We'll do that one next year.
No, Eddie, will they put a logo or something, or that's just the paint itself?
No, part of it will be, there will be either the name or a logo or something put on the side. We get to pick what that wants to be, so we'll let y'all have some input when the time comes.
It's Pecos Hornets.
The east side.
I think the mayor wants his name emblazoned on the table.
I've always proposed that you get a state university to pay to put their logo on there, because then the Aggies and the Longhorns start fighting and the Raiders get involved, and then you can bid up the price and pay for the job by getting your college logo.
Can we
on
do
there.
that?
We can try. I haven't been successful yet, but we can try.
On the water tower across from the high school,
Yes, sir.
the commissioner's court painted that eagle
Yeah.
on that water tower
Okay.
back in 1970.
Yeah.
Wow. 1970.
Okay, need a motion to approve, please?
It's been a while.
I'll make a motion, we approve resolution 20-05-08R, awarding the east elevated storage tank rehabilitation project to Texas Tank Services for the amount of $387,095, as presented by Howdy Lee, Assistant City Manager.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Orona, second by Councilman Baca, to approve resolution 20-05-08R, awarding the east elevated storage tank rehabilitation project to Texas Tank Service for the amount of $387,695. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, number 13, discuss consider resolution 20-05-09R, adopting a change to the master fee schedule with regards to sewer rates.
Mayor, Council, Howdy Liz, the Assistant City Manager. This is a conversation I'm sure y'all knew was coming. If you're hearing from the public as much as we are, this is a conversation that couldn't happen soon enough. And so I want to try to communicate as clearly as I can to the community what we're doing and some of the reasons behind it. You will have a presentation in front of you that we've printed We will make this presentation available online to the public if they want to download it and view it as well. But I want to start with something that's on the very front page at the bottom. There's 3 words that I tend to put on every presentation I do: responsive, effective, and accountable. The departments that work for me, they actually get sick of me saying this all the time. But how we do our job is important to our citizens. And so I expect, and I have a high expectation from my staff, that we will be responsive when there's an issue. We show up, we do what we can to fix it, and we don't put off trying to fix it. We're responsive when there's an issue, and we try to address it as quickly as we can. We have to be effective when we show up. We can't just show up and say, yeah, that's a problem, and not know how to fix it, or have to go back multiple times to get it fixed correctly. So when we show up, we need to have the right tools, and we have the right knowledge to be able to fix it the first time. One of the reasons why we're thankful for the equipment that you authorized, that will allow us to be much more effective in our jobs. But the third one is accountable. When we do our job well, we need to document it so that we know what we did and what we did right, so that we can repeat those results in the future. And when things don't go well, we have to own it. Nothing will erode trust from the community faster than us trying to cover up a mistake or make excuses when something doesn't go well. And so tonight, this is really our attempt to try to be responsive and accountable, because some of what our citizens are facing, unfortunately, we had a role to play in that. So, a couple of utility fundamentals. When we're talking about water and sewer utilities, we're not talking about the general fund of our municipal government. And so there's a completely different mindset when you're talking about a utility. And number one, we operate like a business. And so I've heard all of my life and all my career, I wish government would operate more like a business. Well, sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. But in water and sewer utilities, we run this like a business. And so every business practice that a small business owner uses on a daily basis, we use as well to operate our utilities. And so one way that that shows up is the people that use the service pay for the service. And that's done through the rates and the fees that we charge for service. If you look at school finance, there are people in our community that are paying taxes to the school that don't have kids in school anymore. And so the general fund and typical government funding is they spread the cost over an entire population. For a utility, the people who use the service pay for the service. And that's a very important distinction when we're talking about rates and how we calculate the rates. If you don't like your bill, you have control over how much water you use. And that's not really true for your property taxes. But with your utility bill, if you don't like how much the bill is, you have the option of consuming less and dropping your bill. You have some control. The next point is that the customers that cause the expense should pay the expense. This is something that is confusing sometimes when people want to develop a new piece of property, whether it's on the east side or the north side or wherever. If it's on the edge of the community and they want to develop and there's no water and sewer there, they typically walk in the door thinking that the city's just going to pay to run that line out there to them. That's not how it works. If you are doing a development that's creating the demand for the cost of running this line, you pay the cost of running that line. Because the fourth point is we don't like subsidies. And so it's not fair for Grandma June to pay for your sewer line that's being extended out to your new multi-million-dollar development. And so the people that cause the expense should pay for the expense. So these are some concepts that factor into how we adopt rates for our service. 2 more points before we kind of get into the weeds. When you calculate sewer rates, the industry across the world, but specifically across America, there are 2 predominant ways that we calculate your sewer charge. The first way is called winter average, and the second way, that we'll see in a second, is called total consumption. Winter average recognizes that we have no idea how much sewer leaves your house. We recognize that there's quite a real possibility that not every gallon of water that you use goes back down the sewer. So the assumption in winter averaging is that the water you use in the winter is probably your true domestic need. That's your public health, your welfare water, the domestic water you use inside the house that you do in the winter is probably the same domestic water consumption you're gonna have for the rest of the year. You're gonna probably take just as many showers, probably gonna use the restroom the same amount of times given in a week or a month. So this method will take your water consumption during the winter, average it, and then lock that number in for an entire year to calculate your sewer bill. So that in the summer, when consumption is high, your sewer bill is low, with the assumption that not every gallon you use is gonna go down the sewer line. That's the underlying rationale behind the winter average. Some of the problems with that is, number one, it calculates your utility bill on a guess. I'm guessing how much water you use in the summer and how much really goes into the sewer and how much doesn't. I have no way of knowing. And so because I'm guessing, then the rates that I set are higher because there's more uncertainty. So I don't know if you're using 10 gallons in the sewer or 100 gallons in the sewer, but I'm gonna assume 10. That means I have to charge a higher rate to cover all of my costs. And so I'm really using some assumptions and some guesses to figure out what your sewer bill really should be. And then finally, with this method, typically over time, your low volume consumers subsidize the high volume consumers, because your grandma and grandpa and your people on fixed income, they're probably using 2,000 gallons a month, and that's on a really active month. And their bill per 1,000 gallons is usually higher than someone who consumes a lot of water, because the more water you use, if that cost is fixed, then you're actually getting rewarded for using more water. And so there's benefits and challenges to using the winter method. And for a long time, the city of Pecos has been using the winter method to calculate wastewater charges. The second way is total consumption. It also recognizes that not every gallon of water you use is going down the sewer, but it recognizes that we have no way of knowing how much water goes through the sewer. So it charges you for every gallon of water you use, but it should do it at a reduced rate, because we're spreading the cost over all of the water consumption, not a guess of how much consumption you used. For example, right now we are averaging about 3 million gallons a day of water being consumed by this community. When we get into the summer, that'll be over 4 million, pushing 5 million gallons a day of water that we use on average. 40% of that water shows up at the wastewater plant. I don't know who that 40% comes from, but I'm pretty confident that 40% of that water is going to end up at my wastewater plant. And so when we calculate the rates for sewer service, we factor in some of those adjustments, that every gallon you use, we're going to charge you, but we know not every gallon's going down the sewer, so it's a lower rate to make up for the fact that not every gallon is going through. Those are two completely different philosophies in how you calculate sewer charges. One of the benefits is that your bill is calculated on verifiable data. That meter tells me how many gallons you used, and in 90% of the time, that meter is accurate and we have confidence in that number. If the meter's not working, we know quickly and we can give you an adjustment, but it's verifiable data used to calculate your bill. Also, low volume users do not subsidize high volume users, because the more you use, the more you pay. And so the people who are using the service pay for the service. And the more sewer that is generated, that factors into how we size the lift station. It factors into how we size the pipe that transmits that waste. So the people who use more of the service are causing more of the expense in our utility. So if you use total consumption, it is a more equitable way to distribute the cost. And the customer still has control over how much their bill is. So on the next slide, why are we talking about this today? In January, we came to the council and presented the fact that our ordinances are written in a way that total consumption would be used. But in practice, the city has been doing winter averaging for as far back as we can find records. And so we needed to make sure that what we're doing matches the ordinances that were adopted. And total consumption was what was passed. The practice was winter averaging. And we made the decision to go back to total consumption. So in January, we changed the way sewer bills were calculated. And nobody noticed until we get to the spring and water consumption starts going up. Because what should have happened when we made that change is if you stop doing winter average and you go to total consumption, you should adjust the rate that you're charging for the volume to compensate for the fact that not every gallon goes down the sewer. And so the method was changed, but the rate wasn't changed. And so now you're getting the same phone calls I'm getting, but someone that's paying $120 in water is also paying $130 or $140 in sewer, and logically that doesn't make sense. And so in the past, their sewer bill wasn't that high because we were assuming winter averaging. And so our citizens right now are having significantly higher utility bills, and it just happens to hit in the middle of the COVID recession when everybody's worried about their household budgets and whether they can pay the bill or not. And in the middle of all this mess, we're sending them higher bills, and they're wanting to know why. And so our attempt tonight is to bring a common sense solution to provide some relief to the customers in the middle of this COVID by dropping their bills, but also bring it back to a more realistic calculation of how we arrive at those rates and the impact it has on our citizens. So, page says a common sense solution. I'm just going to show you what we're proposing to do with the rates. Right now, the current rate is your base bill is $16 a month. It doesn't matter how much water you use, you're paying $16 before anything happens. And then based on your consumption, we currently have 3 tiers. So if you use 0 to 10,000 gallons, we're charging you $3.82 for every 1,000 gallons you use. The next tier is $5.07 per thousand for the next 40,000 gallons of water that you use. And then anything over that, we're charging you $6.32 per thousand. And so that tiered rate is an industry standard way of doing it, but those numbers were calculated assuming winter averaging. And we're not using winter averaging anymore, and so those rates are being applied sometimes unequitably to customers depending on how they're using their water. What we're proposing to do is change the method of calculation. So for the first step, you'll see that your base charge is going to be determined by your meter size. So the larger your meter is, the more we're going to charge you for the base. Because if we're going to operate like a business, there are fixed costs that we have to cover whether we use a drop of water or not. And one of those is debt service. We have to cover debt service, and if all of our debt service is calculated on how much you use, there's tremendous risk and variability as that goes up and down. And so we use the debt service, and a portion of our personnel cost is factored into the fixed. And so these fixed rates are designed to cover all of our fixed costs, regardless of how much water or sewer is generated, so that we know we can meet those basic requirements of our utility. The rest is recovered through the variable rate. We do it based on meter size, again, because the people who cause the expense should pay for the expense. Well, a 10-inch meter at $1,000 a month is pretty startling, but we have one of those. There's one 10-inch meter in our utility, and they use millions of gallons every month. So their bill is significant anyway. And so this really doesn't change their monthly calculation much, but it also allows me to take that base and keep it lower for the residential customers that are not placing a big demand on our system. And so for commercial customers that have large meters, we have to factor that into the size of lift stations and the size of transmission lines. And so they're putting a demand on our system that they should be helping pay for. And so that is done based on the size of meter that they use. Yes, we know that not every gallon of water that goes to that meter is going to go through the sewer. But if you have a 2-inch meter, you have the potential to put a lot more water in our sewer than grandma does with a 5/8 residential meter. And so we calculate the bill differently. There will probably be some people that are upset about that, but this is the equitable way to recover fixed costs. And it also helps us more make sure that the low users are not subsidizing the high users. Next, all consumption is $4.20 per thousand. And we're removing the tiered system. And one of the reasons we're doing that, on water, there's two reasons to do an increasing rate on water. And I don't want to overwhelm everybody with what could be boring information, but I'm a nerd and I geek out over this kind of stuff. The more water you use, the larger pumps I have to have, the more water storage I have to have in elevated tanks. So you can make a case that there's an increasing cost to our system for high volume users. On the sewer side, that's not necessarily the case. If I factored in your size on the fixed charge that I'm levying to you, then on my variable cost to treat sewer, the higher the volume I get, actual cost per thousand decreases over time. And so a tiered structure on the sewer rate doesn't always make sense. And we feel this is more equitable to our customers, that every gallon you use is the same price, and because we're not getting proportionally more cost for those gallons, we've already factored that into the base charge based on your meter size. And so, after all of that, what does this do to a customer's bill? And so, on the next page, we've calculated some examples of what will happen. And so for our residential meters here, we're assuming these residential customers have a 5/8 standard residential meter. The vast majority of our customers all use a standard 5/8 residential meter. The number of 1-inch and 2-inch meters on the residential side is really low, and we've got a way to address that in just a second. But for a senior, right now, using 5,000 gallons, their current bill is $23.64. That's with the sewer discount that we provide to seniors and disabled and veterans. With this change, that senior's bill will go down to $15 a month for sewer. Not their total bill, their sewer charge will go down to $15 a month. And one of the reasons being is that in that base fee for them $15, that includes the first 5,000 gallons that they use. Your basic domestic needs for you and your family is going to be covered in this base charge. And so the water that you use above and beyond basic domestic needs, you start to pay additional fees for, because that's additional load that potentially is on our system. Does that make sense? A residential with 5,000 gallons of consumption that's not getting that senior discount, right now their bill is $35.10. Their bill is going to go down to $20, so they're saving $15 a month on their sewer bill with this change in calculation. The average residential customer in Pecos right now is using 8,000 gallons a month with a 5-inch meter, so the average customer right now is paying $46.56 per month for their sewer. It will go down to $32.60, which is a savings of $13.96. And then we have a few residential customers that will get up to 25,000 gallons. Sometimes that's outdoor use, sometimes it's filling a pool, sometimes all spring and summer they'll be at 25,000 gallons.
Sometimes you forget to turn it off.
Sometimes that happens. Currently, that customer right now is going to pay $130.25 for their sewer bill, and it will go down to $104, which is a reduction of $26.25. And so clearly, the higher consumption they go in residential, the charge stays at $4.20 instead of escalating up to that $6 per thousand. So there'll be significantly lower bills for residential customers that have really high consumption. But many times, those really high consumptions are a result of a water leak. And we work with customers that have water leaks to help them get the leak fixed. We'll typically give them a leak adjustment to adjust their bill down. And the rationale behind that is, if you have a catastrophic leak in your home and you used 100,000 gallons this month, and it happens, you're going to have a huge water bill. But you also have to pay a plumber, or you have to buy the parts to fix that water leak. And because I want to conserve how much water we consume, I want you to fix that leak as soon as possible. So if I can help you get that leak fixed by not making you pay all of the water bill. That gives you the money to pay the plumber or buy the parts and fix it yourself, and then we adjust the bill, because I want you to fix that leak as fast as possible. And so if we can do something to help you fix that leak, I'm willing to write off a little bit of water so that you can get the leak fixed and we don't waste as much water over the next several months. Commercial impact, for a commercial customer that has a 1-inch meter using 50,000 gallons, think your local restaurants. Right now they're paying $257. Depending on how close they get to that 50, they're going to be at $258.85. Basically the same bill. One of the reasons that exists is because over a season between winter and fall and spring and summer, a commercial business won't see as much change in their water and sewer consumption because their business is the same throughout the year. There may be some more people going to eat at the restaurant and they're using more water, but most of that water is probably still going into the sewer. So this doesn't change the calculation for commercial customers, because I'm not as confident that they have less water going down the sewer as a residential home. A customer with a 2-inch meter that uses 100,000 gallons, again, their bill's really not going to change much at all based on how we're changing this calculation. The other thing that guarantees is that our residential customers are not subsidizing our commercial customers. It should be the other way around. And so that's what we've attempted to accomplish with this rate. I'll end with some questions. What about, because I'm already getting these, what about watering my yard? I've used more water this month than I was watering my yard. Well, for those homes that are going to irrigate their yards, we actually recommend that you request a yard meter, so that you have a meter for your domestic use and you have a meter for your irrigation use. That way it takes the guessing work out of it, and we know exactly how much water you use domestically in your home, and that has a sewer charge assigned to it. The irrigation meter has no sewer charge. None of the water that goes through that irrigation meter gets a dime of sewer charges on it, because we know you're using that water to wash your truck, water your yard, or fill your pool. And so for those residences that do a lot of irrigation, we actually recommend an irrigation meter.
And how much does that meter cost?
The meter set is a typical, same for a new residential home. You pay once up front to get the meter, and then the charges are your basic residential consumption. Yes.
We used to have those yard meters at one time several years back, but when we applied for a loan from the Texas Water Development Board for a new water field, they told us to eliminate the yard meters.
Water Development Board has changed their position on that now, and they actually recommend yard meters because now we're talking water instead of sewer,
Right.
but research shows that the only effective tool I have to influence your water demand is price. I can put water restrictions out there, and the last city I was at had some very aggressive water restrictions. And if we move from water all you want to water once a week, we see a drop in consumption, but it's not as much as you would think it would be. The only effective tool we have to influence your water use is price. And so if we end up in a drought like everybody in Texas did in 2011 to 2012, what many communities were doing is taking that discretionary water use, the non-domestic water use, and they tripled the rate that they charged for it, because that immediately cut down on the water consumption and got you through the drought. Well, a yard meter gives me that tool that I don't have if you're doing everything through a domestic meter, because then I've got to figure out how to change the rate structure to get you to stop watering your yard, where a yard meter is actually more effective to change behavior through rates with a separate meter. So the board supports yard meters now, but back then they also recommended you have a declining water rate structure, so that the more you use, the cheaper it was. They don't do that anymore either. A couple more questions that we get. What if I'm filling my pool? Well, the current ordinance right now allows for us to make an adjustment if you can show that some of your consumption didn't go through the sewer. And so if you have a swimming pool and you fill your pool up, if you can show us pictures and you can document how much water went into that pool, we can back that off of the sewer calculation. You're still gonna pay for it on the water side, but we can back it off on the sewer calculation because we know it went into a pool and not into the sewer. So we can make that adjustment by ordinance. And finally, what if I'm on a fixed income? We have quite a few customers right now. 840 customers in our system have applied for and received the discount that we give to senior citizens, veterans, and disabled. And so if you're on a fixed income and you have not come in and applied for that, we encourage you to do so because it can reduce the water and the sewer bill that you pay. And so we want to make sure everybody knows about that. So if you water your yard a lot, we have a way to help you. If you fill out your pool, we have a way to help you. And if you're on a fixed income, we have a way to help you. You just got to come in and talk to us so that we can do something that's beneficial for you. So in conclusion, to wrap this up,
Also say, if you have a water leak, we're willing to help.
if you have a water leak, we're willing to help you. And I've actually had a couple of instances where we've had elderly, usually the gentleman come talk to me, but elderly couples that are on a fixed income, they have a major water leak that lasts for several months. And they don't have the resources to get a plumber. And so I've got connections with some plumbers in town, and so we have asked the plumber to go do an evaluation, and the city pays the plumber to find the leak for these senior citizens. They've got to be in our system as a senior, but they don't have the resources to find the leak and fix it. And so it's been going for 3 or 4 months, and now they owe us thousands of dollars. And so we've got plumbers that will go inspect their home, find the leak, help us get it fixed, and they have a reduced rate that they charge, and we help cover that cost because there's no way for those citizens to fix that leak. They just don't have the resources, and we can help them in that situation. Hopefully, we can be responsive to this issue because the citizens are paying incredibly high bills that they've not seen before, and some of that expense is because we didn't change the method of calculation in January when we probably should have. And so we want to be accountable and say, look, we own it. This is what we did, and it's negatively impacting our citizens. This is a solution we feel that meets their needs, but also protects the integrity of our utility because we operate like a business. And we're not in the business of losing money on our utility system because then if we can't pay for the pipes, then when you need the water, it's not there. So we have to remain solvent. We have to remain sound in our business practices. But we believe this is something that will benefit our customers, benefit our citizens, and hopefully take at least something off of their mind during this COVID time. So I'll happily answer any questions that you have.
Well, I like the presentation because it kind of answered some of my questions.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize how it was broken down. I had a general idea, but
Yeah.
I never had seen it like that, and it kind of, and so from the phone calls that we've been getting about our water bill went suddenly up, and it was because of this change that we did in January.
Mhm.
Well, not just because of that, but
No, I
because
know.
everybody's.
They're
kind of
using more water
using it,
now.
Yeah.
And so
Oh, yeah.
January, February, and usually March, nobody notices.
That's true.
Yeah.
But once we hit April and they start using more water,
Start watering and
then
stuff.
it starts showing up.
Yeah.
Not only that, but everybody, like you said,
It's mostly
there
the
was no
kids. I mean,
school,
the kids
more
are
people
home.
were home,
Yeah.
so more used.
Oh, man,
started
yeah.
going up earlier this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate how you broke it down.
Thank you very much.
It helped me understand it a little better. I don't wanna pay it, so. But I understand it's part of my,
Yeah.
you know, it's a part of our
So,
life.
is this something, the proposed, rates, is this something that you want to continue until maybe the COVID, I don't know, is over? Or is it something you just wanna implement from now on?
Well, yes and no. We have a full rate study that is being started to evaluate the water and sewer side of our system. And I have a master plan that we've just started to evaluate the water distribution and the sewer collection. So in about 12 months from now, I'm gonna have a much better idea of what's going on in our utility and how much we need to be investing to keep our pipes flowing. Right now, I have an idea, but it's not fully fleshed out like it will be after the master plan. So probably in 12 months from now, we're going to be having this conversation about water and sewer. And so we're proposing this adjustment to be effective until we come back with the next revision after our rate study and our master plan. So if COVID only lasts 3 more months, we're not going to go back to the way we were doing things. This would be the way we calculate until we have a different set of data to bring you, probably 12 months from now.
I saw that we made a payment to Arcadis.
Yes.
Is that when we expect the?
We've got a couple of things going right now. Arcadis is doing an evaluation on the water side. And so I think their first study was done in 2009, and they did an evaluation of our aquifers and our well fields. They updated it in 2014, which was 5 years later. So 5 years later in 2019, I initiated an update to that plan. So they have been evaluating the health of our aquifers and how well our pumps are operating. The project's kind of on hold right now because no one can travel with COVID, so their technicians aren't coming out here like they were, so hopefully we'll get this wrapped up. I do know in the last 5 years our aquifers have gone down 15%. That's startling. And so we are going to have some kind of response to that. And again, citizens typically don't want to hear this, but water's not free. And the most expensive thing a city can do is go find a new water supply. Hands down, the most expensive thing this city will ever do is go find a new water supply. It's insanely expensive. And so if we can get a control on our water consumption and the aquifers that we have today and buy another 20 years, then we can wait 20 or 30 years before we have to go find another water supply. And so part of the Arcadis study is to evaluate where are our aquifers today, how hard have they been hit. One of the things that I don't know is how much is us and how much is everybody else out there that's reeling into our aquifer, because the aquifers are getting hit hard by everybody. But we have to be mindful of the impact that has. On the sewer side, we're designing a brand new wastewater treatment plant, and that's not cheap. But our plant today is rated for 1.6 million gallons. My peak day is over 2 million gallons right now. We have to increase the capacity of our plant. We don't have a choice, and that's not cheap either. So the people who use the service pay for the service, because there's not a whole lot of grants out there for this. We have some potential free money that will be used, but not covering everything. So
I don't know if we've asked before, but are we still selling bulk water?
at this time we are, yes.
Has the demand gone down, or?
Demand has gone down considerably the last time I checked, but when the oil field re-energizes, I expect those will come back up as well.
And it's starting to regenerate.
Yeah, it's starting to re-energize.
Big time. What I shut down 2 weeks ago, I'm bringing back.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't last.
We expect it
Time to go to work.
We expect it to fire back up pretty quickly, which is good for the community.
Yeah, it is. It is.
For the economy.
Okay, guys, so we need a motion to approve the new master fee schedule.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 20-05-09R, adopting a change to the master fee schedule with regards to sewer rates, as presented by Assistant City Manager Mr. Howdy, SMB.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilman Santana, second by Councilman Bata, to approve resolution 20-05-09R, adopting the changes to the master fee schedule with regards to sewer rates. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 14, discuss consider resolution 20-05-10R, temporary suspending council payment. Councilman Olona?
With the news that we got from Melanie Purcell last week, I just thought it'd be prudent for us to suspend our pay until we get onto solid grounds and where this COVID-19 gets over and the economy picks up again, I think we need to support our staff and the city to whatever we can, however we can. Suspending our pay for a while, that's just my asking of this council.
Council?
I didn't put a date on it, but if we do pass it starting June.
I know several years back, a commissioner from our county, gave back he was retired, receiving, I guess, retirement. So he gave back his monthly check back to the county. But he did that on an individual basis. Not everybody across the board did the same thing. So I think it's the same thing. If you wanna give back it should be on an individual basis. You know, Valerie's a single mom. The mayor, he's gotta drive around Pecos.
I actually give mine to somebody else right now, so I'm helping them with some bills during the COVID stuff, so I was kinda gonna ask to be exempt from it, so I could keep doing what I was doing.
And the money that I get paid, I give back to the city in the form of water bill payments.
No, you're sure the one that jacked up.
And I'm on a fixed income now, so it's,
Yeah.
I'm in a
It is, I mean, and
different,
it doesn't.
it's a different situation.
I mean, it's.
It should be on an individual
Right,
basis.
it comes in handy and.
So if you want to, just tell Seth, hey, I wanna do what Mr. Horan does, and if you don't, you don't.
So we'll do no action? Okay.
You're looking at the wrong guy.
So we'll go ahead and just send it a no action.
Well, hold on. I think we need to.
I mean, that's my opinion, that's the way I
You wanna
feel.
take a
Unless
vote?
you wanna.
I still think we need to send a unified front and not be one here, one there, and one not, one yes.
Yeah, I kinda agree with, Councilman Ronan. I'm working, so if what we get here can help somebody that works for the city, I'm willing to do it all.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and take a vote. The motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 20-05-010R, temporarily suspending council payments, except for the mayor, since he is donating his money to a private citizen. I'll make that
Second?
stipulation.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilman Juan, a second by Councilman Aldana to temporarily suspend council payment with the exception of the mayor. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? 3, motion denied.
But like I say, you can still do it on an individual
Oh, no.
basis, just tell finance director or
Yeah.
our city manager, hey, and I applaud you for that.
Yeah.
But you two guys have jobs right now.
Yeah. No, I don't do that.
Okay, so motion fails.
Yeah.
Move on to number 15. Discuss, consider ordinance 20-05-02. Adopting rules regarding the public rights to address the government body, including city council and all council appointment boards. First reading, Ms. Nichols.
Do we have to,
You have to motion to deny.
right?
Someone has to motion to deny.
Oh, so we have to do,
The last
okay.
resolution.
All right, do we have a motion to deny, resolution 20-05-10R?
I'll make a motion to deny,
Okay.
that resolution, 20-05-10R.
Second.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilman Trujillo, second by Councilman Reyes to deny temporary suspension of council payment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries to deny. That one? Okay. Okay, number 15, discuss consider ordinance 20-05-02, adopting rules regarding the public right to address the government body, including city council and all council appointed boards. First reading, Ms. Nichols.
Mayor and council, I am bringing this ordinance to y'all because the Texas state government had approved a House bill back in September of 2019, allowing municipalities to put into writing regulations for public comments. So especially now with COVID going on, I've been getting a lot more questions, so it's perfect timing to get this put into writing. So I was just gonna read off the regulations that I put in this ordinance. I actually copied it off of Deer Park, Texas. But it states that in order to submit a public comment, residents would need to turn in a form to the town secretary. Before the meeting, we had already, it's already an unwritten rule, we had people already submitting why they would be, turning in public comments. It's kind of I liked that practice for record keeping purposes. There's sometimes where I don't know how to spell the person's names, or I miscommunicate why they are submitting that public comment, and these are permanent records. So I think it's best to have the right information for if someone comes in 100 years, they have the right information of why that person came to the council. And also, like I stated previously, these were already unwritten rules we were kind of following. We asked that the residents state their name and place of residency when they address you all. That we limit the public comments to 3 minutes, unless it's by the discretion of the mayor to extend that. We are also, the mayor asks if it's going to be if the comments for a public hearing or not, and if they say yes, he asks that they hold those comments for the public hearing. The remarks that are not tolerated by law, we will not allow those to be made. And also, this is a new one that I hadn't seen, but now that we're so invested in technology, it states that if any person wants to submit a presentation, they have to turn that into staff by 12 p.m. noon time, the day of the meeting, so that staff can review to ensure that it doesn't include anything unlawful in there. And then also, of course, we wanted to have that in writing for the residents to view as well, that in Texas Open Meetings Act, it does restrict that council members do not make discussions out of public comments. You can state a fact or let them know that we'll look into it further or we'll bring it onto a next agenda, but that's where it stops. Public comments is not an open platform to go into discussion. It's already, that was a law, an act before this House bill. That's always been.
And that's what people don't understand, that when they come and make public comments, they ask questions that we cannot
They wanna
respond.
respond.
They're looking at us like, well, I'm asking you a question, you know, but they gotta understand that we cannot comment.
Yes, so it's just basically us putting all those unwritten rules into writing to provide residents.
Okay, need a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion, Mayor, to accept ordinance number 2020-05-02, adopting rules regarding the public's right to address the governmental body, including city council and all council appointed boards. First reading.
Second.
Yes, I have a motion by Councilman Tellez, seconded by Councilman Alona, to adopt ordinance 20-05-02, adopting rules regarding public right to address the governing body, including city council and city appointed boards. First reading is presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Number 16, discuss consider ordinance 20-04-02, adopting a trash container ordinance, second reading. Mr. Swanson.
Mayor and Council, Seth Sorensen, City Manager. I'd like to just take a quick second to express my appreciation for city staff. As you can tell by tonight's presentations, we have excellent staff and they are helping this city, and I'm very appreciative of them. Also to thank all of you for your support, especially for the purchase of new equipment. It's much needed, and we do feel that it's going to be an excellent way to improve our customer service, especially on the trash collection side. So thank you for your support on that. As you may recall from last month, we brought forth this trash container ordinance, and we already had an ordinance in place. However, we wish to clarify some of the language in there. The previous language required that business owners have a receptacle for anyone who's going to visit the business, but it didn't express that it was the responsibility of the business owner to provide that or to maintain it. It just said there has to be a receptacle. Well, it either magically appears and it magically gets taken care of, or somebody has to take charge of that. And so we added the language to specify that they're the ones responsible for it. They're the ones who make sure it's not overflowing. You know, if you pull up to a gas station and you ever tried to empty out your car, especially on a road trip with kids, and everyone else got there before you, you've seen the overflowing. And we're trying to avoid that. As Mr. Lisenby pointed out, we've got wind in West Texas. I know that's a shock to everybody. But we've got wind, and if the trash is not contained, it blows all over the place, and it makes us look bad. And that's not the foot that we're trying to put forward, especially for people visiting our community, because we are a much better community than that. And so we want them to maintain it. We want to make sure that it's not overflowing. We don't want dogs or raccoons or any other vermin getting into it, and so they've got to secure it. I will say, just as an aside, that I've already seen one of the businesses in town that has started to put out plastic receptacles, and they've got it tied to their cart holder, and so it shouldn't be going anywhere. And so it is already, word's already getting out that this ordinance is being considered. Again, it has specific language to prevent scattering, meaning that you've got to service it and get it out of there, as well as abatement. And so this is language that was not in there, but this is very similar to the language that we have in other ordinances throughout the city, which basically says that if they refuse to take care of their customers and the trash that's generated by their site, that we will come in, we'll take care of it, and we'll turn around and charge you for it. Obviously, they don't want to do that because we have our own markup, and they can probably do it cheaper. And finally, we, again, as with any ordinance, we seek for compliance, not to hit them with a penalty. But we do have language in here to provide a penalty should they just flat out refuse, and if they don't work with code enforcement in this process. And it includes a fine up to $2,000. So it won't exceed $2,000, and it's obviously up to the municipal judge to determine what is a equitable fine for that. And obviously, if you're a repeat customer, you're likely to see increases every time you come back. But that's not what we're after. What we want is the trash to be taken care of. And so those are the changes that we are recommending to the council. Some clarifying language, some additional language on what will be done to make sure that it's addressed, and the penalty that is possible.
I'll add, just because I expect we all will get the question, why is the city making us do this if the city's not taking care of their trash? And the answer is, tonight y'all authorized over $1 million of investment in capital so that we can improve how we take care of our trash. So we are very cognizant of this issue, and we're putting our money where our mouth is to improve the system, and we're just asking everybody else to do the same.
We're putting the citizens' money where our mouth is.
Who's going to be, is it code enforcement? Who's going to be?
This would be code enforcement as the primary.
Now, if they have like a violation, it's not necessarily going to be ticketed the first time. We can do warnings, we can do.
Right, so the typical workflow for code enforcement, regardless of what they're seeing, is first of all, they try to contact them and just explain to them, this is the violation, this is what we're expecting to see. Sometimes it's not possible to get in contact with them. It should be a little bit easier with businesses to at least find a manager or somebody who's responsible at that time of the day. So that should be a little bit easier. Obviously, if it continues, then we start writing a written warning before we start working our way up to certified letters and actual citations. The citations and taking them to court is really the last.
Yeah.
And our code enforcement does an excellent job about giving multiple warnings and trying to work with them. And for some people, they give us feedback that we need, saying, I'm not able to address this right now because of X, Y, and Z. Can you give me a little bit of time? Code is always willing to work with them as long as we know what's going on and as long as there's a mutual expectation. Very similar to how our utility works with those that are having trouble with their bill. If they're having trouble, come talk to us. We can't resolve it if you don't talk to us, and it doesn't do us any good for you to go on Facebook and talk bad about the city. So come talk to us. And same thing with code. If they'll talk to them and they have a conversation going, they usually work with them long before it ever gets to that point.
So how many times are we going to put up
Well, I think we need to have at least one in the front and one in the back for our employees as they're walking into the building.
Is this door accessible down here in the bottom?
Right now, it's locked because we don't have anyone coming into the lobby except for permits.
Mhm.
Normally it is open, and
I think once we do, we'll put one here, one back,
Yeah.
3 of them on, or you had 4, or any door.
Yeah.
So we have nothing to be.
yeah. And we do, patrol the grounds, at least a couple times a week to make sure that any traffic is going onto the, city hall property gets picked up and taken care of.
Need a motion to approve?
I make the motion that we approve ordinance 20-04-02, adopting a trash container ordinance, second reading as presented by City Manager, Mr. Seth Sorensen.
Second?
I'll second.
Motion by Councilman Santana, second by Councilman Baca, to approve ordinance 20-04-02. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 17, discuss consider ordinance 20-04-03, adopting a tree ordinance, second reading. Mr. Simpson?
Mayor and council, as the mayor said, this is the second reading of this tree maintenance ordinance. This is something that was not previously included, so this is practically all new language for the city. What brought this up, or at least to the forefront, is we had about 4 very beautiful, very mature trees that were healthy in our right-of-way, and an adjacent landowner cut them down without us knowing and without our permission. And anything that's within the right-of-way, you gotta work with the city so that we at least know what's going on. And so as a result of that, we had a discussion and said, we need to be able to know what's in the right of way. Bless you. And we also need to know, be able to ensure the health of all trees in the community, because if you get any kind of beetle or anything that's coming in, they go for the dead stuff and then they move on to the live stuff when they run out of food. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping live trees, that we're keeping them healthy, that we're keeping them trimmed appropriately, so that not only are they looking good, but we're keeping them healthy, because shade is premium out here. I like shade. I like it being just a little bit cooler than the 105 that we had last week. That was a little bit warm. And so the first part of this lays out some of the definitions of what we're describing as far as what is damage, what's a nuisance, what is in the public property. Again, this has a focus on keeping them healthy. That's what we want, and if they are healthy, we want to keep them, unless it's absolutely necessary to take them down for another reason. And so this grants code enforcement the authority to have processes in place to monitor these as part of their permit review process. Also, it creates a tree board that will come up with a list of acceptable trees, because there are a lot of trees that will grow out here in the desert that are beautiful trees, that are hardy, that don't take a lot of water or sewer for that matter. And so we want to encourage that diversity. We want to encourage those canopies and that beautification of our city. The last 2 parts that I want to point out is that it refers to national standards for tree care. We don't have a lot of them around here, but there's certain trees that if you trim them wrong, you kill them, or you make them unhealthy, and you actually invite more bugs and more rot just by trimming them wrong. And so we want to make sure that whatever they're doing for whatever type of tree, that they're doing it correctly and keeping things healthy again. And finally, again, what started this all off is to not tear down public trees. They're for the public good, they're for the public beautification, and we don't want people just going out and indiscriminately cutting them down. The last parts are, again, violations and penalty. This is the last step that we want to go through, but if accepted, it would carry a fine of not to exceed $500 per instance. And also the city, again, would have the ability to go in and determine that if a tree is unhealthy, and it can't be trimmed, or it can't, otherwise be taken care of, that it would be taken down.
And this is only for public, right? Not like at home? If I wanted to get rid of a tree at my.
Right, so if you wanted to get rid of a tree in your backyard, then by all means. But if there is a tree in your backyard, let's say that you've got a 40-foot pine tree, and unfortunately it's dead, all the needles have fallen off, then the city has the ability to come in and let you know that you need to take that down. And the reason for that is twofold. Is one, again, you don't want to encourage rot or bugs, but you also don't want a tree blowing over with strong winds, which we tend to have around here. And so as soon as a tree dies, usually its root system dies as well. And so the only time the city would step in for anything in your backyard where they would require you to do it is if it was a nuisance tree. But if you had a tree and it was healthy in your backyard and you wanted to take it down, that is your right as a property owner. And so the only ones that, other than nuisance trees, that we would patrol would be in the public right of way.
Need a motion? Need a motion? Need a motion?
Mayor, move the motion, we approve ordinance 20-04-03, adopted a tree ordinance. Second reading is presented by Seth Sorensen, city manager.
Need a second, please? Okay, motion by Councilman Orono, second by Councilman, excuse me, Trujillo, to approve ordinance 20-04-03. Tree ordinance, second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
No.
Is there any reason that we will need executive session? Anybody? Okay. Okay, any items to be discussed for next agenda? No? Need a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Everybody does.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Vaca, second by Councilman Reyes.
Make a motion.
To approve adjournment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Good job.
Time is 8:31.
Yes, and there's only 17 items.